What's up, everybody? This is the Nowhere to Go But Up podcast, and I am your host, Sean Dustin. This is number 2 today, number 2 live stream, and we will be talking to Dan Reeves from the Spiritual Underground podcast, and he's going to be telling us a little bit about his story about alcoholism and addiction, and his experience, strength, and hope, and how he got through it. But first, if you're watching on YouTube, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button on the side, like the video, thumbs it up, hit that little notification. So if you enjoy what I'm putting out there and you want to catch all of the things that I'm doing, you can go ahead and get notified through the YouTube. If you're on Facebook, go ahead and share and like this. Help me out with the algorithm because it is not very nice to me or anybody else unless you're paying them. Anywhere else, podcast platforms, this will be airing probably in about, I'd say, anywhere from 30 days to 5 weeks. Go ahead and subscribe. That will help me become more visible on those platforms themselves. And this episode of the podcast is brought to you by Get Past Your Shit, a book by Kelly McCausey. And it's 19 stories of imperfect people who prove you can. So basically, comeback stories and stories that help you and tell almost like podcasts, right? But just in a book form. And Kelly's story is the first chapter of this book. Kelly's a friend of mine, and she's also a podcaster as well. I was on her show not too long ago, and I actually need to promote that. I didn't do that. Let's go ahead and get these banners up for her. And what I'm going to do now is we are going to the intro, and I'll be back with my guest, Dan Reeves.
Sean Dustin spent time in federal and state prison for drug trafficking and fraud. Upon release in 2006, he had nothing but the clothes on his back, a bag of mail, and legal paperwork. In 2010, he kicked a long-time methamphetamine habit and started the long climb back up the ladder of life. This is the Nowhere to Go But Up podcast. If you want transparency and authenticity, you're in the right place. This is the Nowhere to Go But Up podcast, and this is Sean Dustin.
Hey, what's happening?
How's it going, Sean?
Not too bad. This is my guest for today, Mr. Dan Reeves from the Spiritual Underground podcast. How are you doing, my friend?
I don't know what I would ask for to be better today. Things are really good on my side of the universe. When you say from and you say Spiritual Underground podcast, I'm waiting for a city to come out, but I'll just go ahead and throw that in there. The best I could say is I'm in Louisville, Kentucky, where the Kentucky Derby just happened over this past weekend.
Oh, that's right.
Big time party weekend around here, but it's a whole different show the last 2 years, obviously.
Yeah, how was that? Do you watch it on TV or?
No, I don't. I've kind of, I partook in the party part of it when it was happening because the whole region is a big party. But obviously the last few years that's changed, and I don't delve into that stuff anymore. Usually, actually, what I typically do is I got a place out in the country, and I go out there and get away from it.
Nice.
To be a little insane.
I bet. I've never watched the Kentucky Derby. Never really been a fan of watching horses go around a track. It's never really been my thing.
Me neither. It's right across the road. Well, I actually live in a little town called New Albany, Indiana. It's basically a suburb of Louisville, Kentucky. We're on the other side of the Ohio River, and I've lived here all my life. And I've been to the track when horse racing was going on exactly once. Now there's other things that get held over there. They do. My past employer used to have the Christmas dinner at Churchill Downs and other things, but no, I never did. It never did do anything for me either. I've always had a little aversion to gambling. It's just not something that's never set with me. And so,
Yeah, for me, it's always been the amount of damage that sometimes happens to these horses during these races, and what they do to them afterwards has always been something that I've just like, ugh, because they're such big animals, man. They're beautiful too. Some of these horses are gorgeous, man.
yeah, they really are. And I was just talking to a friend the other day. I'm surprised that the horse industry is, skating by with all the rest of the, all the other animal rights kind of things and different things like that going on in the world. The horse racing industry seems to be sneaking through that for now.
Yeah, that's the billionaire class. No,
Yeah. And hey, it is, when at that time of the year, these sheiks from the Middle East fly in here, and I mean, not just not little money. It's they come flying in their Gulfstreams and big money. Bourbon and horse racing.
Oh yeah, what's funny is the show that I was just on. I went and got them I can't even remember what the name of the bourbon was, because I did some research on the host and found out his favorite drink was bourbon, and so I went and got him a bottle of $60 bourbon.
Yeah.
That's
never really been my thing either.
No.
Although I would take it, and I've drank plenty of it, but the bourbon never was up my alley. And of course, this is what the true word bourbon, and if it's not made here, it's not bourbon. And true, to like some kind of trademarking of the word bourbon has to be made in Kentucky, and that's where it was originally found. And they've got all the breweries down there. People go down there and do taste testing things and tour the whatever they are. I guess what is a thing that makes whiskey? Distilleries. There it is. Yep. So, big industry.
So let's say hi to my friend Stacy Price. Stacy is a friend of mine. She's also a podcaster. Cool. She says, "Hey Sean, hey Dan, awesome website name, Dan."
Thank you. I have a story behind everything I do. That's actually the name of my 12-step groups. My home group it was called Spiritual Underground, and it was a bunch of us that started a podcast together. About 12 of us by chance, but most people fell off and didn't have time for it, and I had a heart to keep it going. So here I am. I'm working on year 3 with the podcast.
That's great, man. I think I'm on my second year, and you're up to like 207, I believe, or 208 episodes out now. Frozen.
Oh,
there you go.
I just checked my Wi-Fi and did it. I restarted my modem right before we started.
It could be me because I got all these things going on here. Yeah, I think my computer, since it's a little bit old, it needs to. I mean, it's still a nice one, but I've got it loaded up with so much stuff. I need to go through it and empty out some of the memory.
Yeah. So what I did, I started my podcast. We were doing groups like roundtables where 5 or 6 of us, and I numbered them 0, 0, 1, 2, 3. And then I interviewed somebody and I called it 100. So there's a mixture of them now, and I've dropped that concept now and just held on to my bigger number. So it's a little inflated, probably by about 80.
That's a good way to do it.
Yeah, I was trying to organize them, and in hindsight, I shouldn't even have bothered with it, but here I am, and who really cares what the number next to it is? I want to be transparent. I wasn't trying to deceive.
Well, you heard it in my intro. We're all about transparency and authenticity here at the Nowhere to Go But Up podcast.
Yeah. Yeah. That, me too today. Not always was I that way.
Yeah, and let's talk a little bit about that, because I was on your podcast, and for anybody out there that didn't know that, we did a 3.5-hour episode, and I got to tell you, to date, that's probably the most concise rendition of my story that's to date that's out there,
Yeah.
that didn't jump too far around, and it kind of stuck to the where we were going. I didn't feel pressured. Like even the one that I just went to, man, I felt like I did a horrible job on the
Yeah.
biggest platform that I've been on.
Oh.
And it was, I wasn't happy with it.
Hmm.
So all of these links, everything to find Dan, his podcast, that episode, the stuff that I did with Kelly in her book in the beginning, all that can be found in the description. Direct links are available there, including direct links. Yeah, direct links to books and everything else that you mentioned will be there as well, to Amazon.
Yeah.
So let's get into it, man. Let's just get down and dirty.
What made Dan today?
Exactly. Tell me about it.
One of the, as I said a few minutes ago, I was born and lived in the same little town my entire life. As a matter of fact, the house I'm sitting in right now was a house that we moved into when I was 3 years old. I did grow up, get married, had kids, not moved away, just down the road. And later on in life, my mom and dad wanted to sell the house. So I ended up buying my childhood house back from them. And then to come around another full circle, my mom passed away in 2016, and my dad was, looking for somewhere to go and didn't really want to live in the house that they lived in. And we made a deal, and now he's living here with me. So me and Dad are back in the same house together. But he is my best friend, and you'll hear a little bit about that tonight. The support and where I was going with that, is that I do hear, I got sober through the 12 steps. And I sponsor guys, and I'm really active in my recovery. And you hear a lot of people have stories of their upbringing as what was a critical part of them kind of going sideways early on. And although everybody gets impacted by their parents one way or the other, I can't really lay that at the feet of my parents, because they were wonderful people. My dad is a solid dude. There's a little saying that gets said that I had everything I needed and most of what I wanted growing up, and that's the thing about this thing that gets its hooks in us like this. It doesn't really matter where you come from. There's, both sides of the tracks, and all the way down both streets on each side of the track. It'd be interesting to know really what makes a person totally fall in this direction. I know trauma is a core element of what ends up having us take this turn to trying to search out our inner peace with outside things, materials and substances and stuff. But so I grew up here, man, and it was fun. I had a good childhood. My mom and dad, if my mom would have survived one more year, they would have been married 50 years at the time. So they were married 49 years at the time my mom passed away, and that'll come up in a little bit too, because it was critical in my early recovery. But I did start, when there's a bell ringer, I say, I went through junior high, or went through elementary school, and I'm guessing everybody feels that deal where they just can't fit in. I think if you had a class of 30 kids and you could get them all alone, if you could get them to be honest then, because I certainly couldn't be honest about it then, I see all this stuff in the rearview mirror. I didn't process any of it while I was going along, but did have that typical thing where I just felt like I didn't fit in with the kids, man. And I felt like I had to work extra hard and do special things to get people to like me, be the class clown, show off the material stuff and lure people to, with, hey man, I got a new this and a new that. Would you like to come over and play with it? And, all that zipped along, but even right then I skip over something that was critical. And every time I talk about it, it doesn't carry the weight it did before, but I just worry that the other person that's involved in this would hear it, but so be it. I've talked about it before. Somehow or another, my dad's best friend, all through from a kid, that couple, dad's best friend and his wife and my parents had boys in the late summer of 1969. So I grew up with this kid. There's pictures of us sitting in the cribs together. Our birthdays were 1 month apart. And I have no idea how this happened. But someplace around 5 years old, and I have no way to tell, he and I started exploring sexually. And, I didn't have any idea what I was doing. It did, there was pleasure involved. So, and the one thing about it was that I remember is that we always hid to do it. So whenever we were doing it, because we were hiding, put an air around it to me that something was telling me I probably shouldn't really be doing that. I don't really know. Today I look at it as just kids exploring, but this went on for a few years, and there's been, apparently I've suppressed some memories of it at some times because I've reconnected with this guy some 30 years later, and he's told me about some things that happened that I don't remember. I don't see he'd have any reason to lie to me about us getting caught in school and kindergarten and different things. But I'll tell you what did happen as a result of that. When I got old enough and the peer group started telling me that was wrong and using words like gay and fag and these kind of things back then, I instantly knew that was a take it to the grave thing. I was never going to tell anybody about that. And as I look in the rearview mirror, that was a thing I was compensating for some reason, because I had this dirty little secret that I didn't want anybody to know. And I had to, make sure that everybody knew I was heterosexual. All judgment around that has washed off of me since coming into recovery, but it caused me for a long time to have a big problem with the gay population. It was completely unfounded. It was all in my own shame. It had nothing to do with reality. And that relation that ended, and I remember some stuff because Dad and the guy still ran around a lot, and I started not wanting to go over there anymore. And when he came over here, I started finding something else to do, go to a friend's house when I knew he was coming, and that just kind of all went under the bridge. And I was able to bury that for the most part for a long time. And like I said, other than that, I don't really remember too many episodes as a kid that upset me. I'm sure there's things, obviously, but nothing that like stood out.
Can I interject here just for a moment? You're not alone, man.
Yeah, I know now.
You're not alone. I went through the same thing. I got introduced to porn at a really young age, and the penetration kind of porn. And, I would go and try to act that out with people. And it wasn't the friends. It was almost like I knew that it was wrong. And I would, do that with, try to do that with little girls and, little boys. It didn't matter what it was.
Yeah.
It was just, I saw something and I tried to mimic it. And as I watch my own daughter grow up, I see that, these behaviors are kind of learned, or they watch you and then they mimic what you do, or they see something on TV and then they try to do what they see on TV. And so same thing, man. I was shameful of that for years and questioned my own sexuality and all of that stuff. So I just want to let you know you're not alone in that.
You're right. Yep. And that's, in recovery, that, I shined some light on that in the first time. And when I first went through the steps with my sponsor, and that was something I wasn't going to talk about, but there was something nudging me to do it, and I got free of it. And ever since then, it's like kind of part of the, and I don't want to downgrade this, but it's the exact same sentiment as the Me Too thing, because once I was able to share about it and open, then just like you're doing, me too. And that helped wash the shame off of it too, because those secrets and all that, that's the worst part about it, is that I felt that I had to keep it to myself. And then we go, I got out of elementary school, and every school I've ever went to has been walking distance from my house. So I switch over and I go to the middle school, and they set us down in home rooms according to our last initial. And I met a guy, and his last initial was the same as mine. And, looking back at it, and it's interesting because this guy passed away Thursday. I just found out about it, and a whole bunch of memories about what me and this dude used to do, running around, drinking, doping, and all that come flooding back to me that I had not really thought about in a long time. But this guy was like the Bender character on The Breakfast Club. I mean,
That's my favorite character.
Yeah, me too. And I was attracted to this dude from a standpoint of wanting to be friends with him. All right, and all that old stuff never come back up again for me. And so I did. I befriended this guy, man, and he kind of was, he was from a little bit different socioeconomic background than I was, and but we had a lot of things in common. We both like to run around the woods. We both like to ride our bikes. We, played around sports. We did a lot of things to the same thing. So we hit it off. Thing about it is this dude's parents sold pot. and I had no idea about any of that at that time, but I had that first experience where somebody said, hey, come on, and fired it up and hands it to me, and I don't even know what to do with it. I'm just mimicking what everybody else is doing. And I don't remember even getting high the first few times that I smoked it. And that would have been around the 7th grade. I don't know, were you 12, 13 about that time? It seems like when I have people in on my podcast, that 12 to 14-year-old range is what comes up 90% of the people when they first get exposed to either drinking or drugging. Yeah. And, but I eventually learned how to do it and get high. And I eventually learned how, drinking beer was normalized. Drinking was normalized in my family system. I didn't witness what I would call alcoholism, although I know now that there was a little bit of it. But I didn't witness things that would have maybe warned a guy that maybe you didn't want to go there. And so there was a snow day in that someplace, I think is right about the same time that we had a snow day, and a buddy of mine down the street, different guy, called me up and said, hey, don't your mom and dad work all day? And I said, yeah, they do. And he said, hey man, why don't me, you and this other fella, why don't we get some beer and we'll drink it at your house? And I've heard a favorite AA speaker of mine talks about stuff, and when he gets to this point, they could have asked me to do anything and I'd have said yes. If they'd have said, let's go kill the Spanish teacher, I'd have said yes. If they'd have asked me, invited me into their group, I'm saying yes, because I want to be a part of. And so when he said, let's do that, there was a little nudge in my belly that said, probably ought not be doing that. But I wanted in, and watched my buddy Tracy come down the street here. And it's interesting to be sitting here right now because I look out the window, the same window he rode down on his moped with 2 boxes of Little Kings in his lap in the snow, and laid his bike over at the bottom of my driveway. You had to kind of turn up. And even then, and this is no joke, I remember us running out there and helping and getting that beer up off of him first and taking care of that first before we helped Tracy get up. We come up in here and sat at the same dining room table as sitting right over there, and proceeded to pretend like we were adults and crack those beers. And, I remember that flooding over me, feeling that good feeling flooding over me. And I don't remember much else. And as my history would prove out over the years, I overshot the mark so many times. I'm the guy that are waking up at the end of the concert to get him to get up and come home, and I'm the guy who's asleep in the car at the end of the night at a bar. I just overshot the mark until I found substances that would keep me going past that. I overshot the mark that night too. And I remember my mom waking me up in bed later on in the evening when it was dark and asking me what was the matter. And I just told her I was sick and didn't feel good. And after talking to my 2 buddies, Kurt and Tracy, they told me they cleaned up the house, and I'd thrown up all over everything, and they cleaned it up, and they put me in the shower and washed me off and put me to bed. And nobody ever knew that ever happened.
So that's got to be really different. And like, cause I know that sometimes when I go back to my mom still lives in the house that I grew up in. And when I go back there, lots of memories I could just be sitting in the backyard and I'll look at a certain place like on the hill, because I used to run around those hills all the time. Mm-hmm. And just different memories will start shooting back. That's gotta be, you've got to have a lot, right? I mean, does that happen to
you? Constantly, I have, my feet have been on this grounds for so many years that, I know every creak and crack, every squeaky step in this house. I know how to miss them all. And the same as you, when you were a kid like that and you were running your hood, you knew every place, right? You knew what yard had a dog in it. You knew where the fence was locked and where it wasn't, and where all the little things where you could get around and move around. And that'll come back into play too later. So yeah, I do. And I flash back here quite a bit, back to my childhood, because I have a ton of memories wrapped up in this house. And that's part of the reason why I still have it. Most of them were really good memories.
Yeah.
So, that was my first drinking and drug. I woke up that next day with that hangover, and I do remember this too. I remember thinking, I ain't never doing that again. I don't know how long it was, when you were in the 7th, 8th grade, that kind of stuff. It just, it was actually easier to get the pot than it was to get the booze. The dope man don't ID you. They don't want to see how old you are. And so, that got me where I needed to be. So I just chased that, every chance I had to get high or drink, I did. And when my buddy that first smoked pot with me said, "Hey, you want to try some of this?" I said, yes, and one of those thises was blotter acid. And so, I'm 15 years old and we're tripping acid on a fairly regular basis on the weekends. And I had a blast doing that, to be honest with you. I mean, I see why I understand how the psychedelics are helping people with PTSD and other kind of things like that. I don't know. It's just, it's definitely a spiritual experience when you take some of that. When somebody said, "Here, we want to do a line," I said yes, and it didn't really make any difference. If somebody had something, I'd try it and we'd do it. And and I had done all this before I even had my driver's license. We're riding on bicycles around town doing all this business. I would come home. My mom and dad wanted me home like at 11 p.m. or something, and I'd come home. I'd park my bicycle outside my bedroom window, come in the house, tell them good night, go to my bedroom, shut the door, open up the window, back out the window, and be out all night long. I remember vividly coming back to my home, and the sun's coming up and the birds are chirping, and I'm coming back to sneak back in my window and come home. Couple of impactful things happened in those first few years, and when I was a pretty good ball player and basketball player, and me and the guy that got the beer with together, we had been playing basketball since we were little bitty, real little, and we were really good together. And so we were playing as a pair every place we went, because we went to the same schools and all this. And he and I were both sitting on the varsity team when we were sophomores. Most of the rest of the JV team put on their street clothes and sat on the bench behind the players. And Kurt and I got to stay suited up and sit. We didn't really play much, and we did get a few minutes here and there. But it was, made me feel good that, we were doing something, and getting promoted and getting seen. And that ended abruptly when, because I'm still smoking pot and doing all this, and some of the seniors wanted to know if I could get them some, and we did. And we smoked some dope on the bus on the way home from an away game. Yeah, insanity. That's the only thing I can think of. That what would make you think that you could get away with that? And we did get away with it for quite some time that evening. But one guy didn't air out the bathroom before opening up the door, because it had a restroom in it, kind of like a, well, everybody knows what a bus restroom looks like. They're them touring buses, not a school bus. And I remember that smell coming up from behind, and it hit me. And as it hit me and moved forward in the bus, the guys' heads were turning around, just like, and I just watched that domino all the way up until it hit the coaches, man. And when that happened, boom, they both jumped up and come to the back of the bus. Well, all the seniors were way back in the back, sitting where the cool kids sit, right? I was a sophomore. I had to sit up in the front. So they blew right past me and went and got all those guys. And I got off that bus that night thinking I got off scot-free until I got to school the next morning, and somebody had alerted somebody else that I had been involved in that too. 3 starting seniors, junior that played a lot, and me as a sophomore all got kicked off the basketball team. Those 3 seniors lost college scholarships due to it. Yeah. and it was a big thing here in New Albany, Indiana, back in 1985.
Merle,
Yeah,
you see what happened to them boys at the high school?
yeah. And I think that's the first time they put our names in the paper, and that was the first time there too. So my mom and dad are hometown, well-known people, and little Dan is getting in trouble, and the whole town knows about it because it was in our little town newspaper, and that's a pattern that happened too. They told me I could try out again when I was a junior, but really what that did, that let me off the hook, man, and I could party and do whatever I wanted to, and I could hold that resentment and say, we cuss, I guess.
Yeah, go for it.
Say, fuck them coaches, and I tried to go out for basketball again when I was a junior, and I couldn't make the team. So like up until now, I'm not a superstar, but I'm a good ball player, and I'm one of the, I would say I was a star in our little league anyway. I was always starting and I was always playing, and my name was always in the paper for how many points I got that night. And then when as a junior, I couldn't make the ball team. Now, I don't really know. I know some of that's on me because I just wasn't working as hard as what I could. And I think I just wanted to fan that resentment. I wanted to say, see, they are wrong. When I was 16, I got my first DUI. It was a little bit later that I got kicked off that basketball team. When I was 19, I got my second DUI. Both of those times they court ordered me to go to Alcoholics Anonymous meetings, and I remember going, and getting my court card signed, but I don't remember a thing about it. They still, I do remember where we were at least for one meeting, because a girl I was dating, older brother, when I told him I got to go to these AA meetings, I don't even know what to do. He said, I know where one's at. Come on. And he took me to an AA meeting, and we stopped and got a 6-pack of beer on the way home. And they still hold meetings in that same building. I've actually spoken that meeting before now, and the same one when I was a kid. But none of that got in, and the only thing it taught me to do was do it smarter. And I think I heard that in your story too. All you did was just figure out how to do it without getting it, attracting attention to yourself. I just got better at it. Both of those times that I got those DUIs, it was for dumb stuff. I got pulled over for dumb stuff. So, what I would do now is make sure I walked around my car and made sure all the lights were working, turn signals, make sure everything like a pilot checklist, stop and drinking didn't seem to be an equation. I just was going to make sure that I wasn't going to get pulled over for something stupid. And, I had a giant big piece of time in between, like that 19 years old. I stopped for a little while, until my tail feathers were put out, went and did the things I needed to do, was on probation for a little bit, went to other diversion programs where you went to the victim impact panel where mothers of kids have been killed drunken driving to sit and shame you.
I've been to that.
Yeah. I got married in that window. I was married for 17 years, had a couple kids, and pretty much continued to just be the same thing I was that whole time. We would still, do a bit of illicit drugs. And, there was a piece of time where I ran into, I remember these windows, and I don't know if it was because of availability or what, or the people I was running with or what, but there was these pockets of time. Like I remember a window of time when I did a lot of cocaine. I remember a window of time when I tripped a lot of acid. I remember a time when I got on the methamphetamine, which we called crank back then.
Finally somebody that knows what that is. Because when I usually say it, people are like, what is that?
Yeah.
That's what meth was before it was meth, or before it was crystal.
Yep. Right. Yep. I was at a biker bar one night, and with these two friends me and my wife met, and they partied the way that I like to party. So we were friends really quick. And the dude was running around he's in a biker gang here. And, some gal grabbed me up at the biker bar and asked me if I wanted to do a line. And I said, sure. And, she pulled me in the women's restroom, and she cut out a line on the toilet tank top on the back of the toilet. And I just hit it. And I knew it didn't taste, it wasn't like any cocaine I'd ever done before.
Ooh, boy, you just gave me chills.
Did it?
Thinking about that.
Yeah. sometime the next day, because I was up all night and felt like really good. And like I said, by now I'd found those substances that would allow me to drink the way that I wanted to, and I could stay in for the fight all night. I could stay in the party all night long. And I talked to my friends the next day, and I was like, "What was that?" And they said, they said it was crank. And I said, "I thought it was coke." And he's like, "Nope." Can we get some more of that? That stuff wore me out pretty fast, though. I know in your story, you hung in there for a long time on that stuff, and it wore me down. It got to be, and I think that was also part of this swinging through different drugs. I would do one for a while, and it would wear me flat out, and I'd have to stop it, or else I knew I was going to crash and burn. I was already crashing and burning. I was young enough and healthy that I could pull the nose up, and find something else that would take that stuff's place and switch. That's another thing. I've always liked switching from substance to substance to substance. Drinking was always on the table for me, but the rest of the stuff rotated in and out of my life.
Yeah, I definitely relate to that. I did the same thing, and I would make the excuse that if I'm selling something, then I can do it. And then once I started seeing I had a problem with it, then I'd switch what I was selling and say, I don't have a problem with that. See,
yeah,
see,
right.
see? I quit like that. Well, because you just started doing this.
Yeah, right. Yep. Just jump over to the other thing, and that's a huge pattern around. A lot of people still do that. I know a guy right now that says he's sober, that he's quit drinking because he stopped drinking hard liquor and he only drinks beer. And he says it with the straight face as he can say, that I quit drinking. I just have some beer now and then, but it ain't like now and then either. That I like to look at this. I'm being part of 12 steps. I've accepted this as a disease, and I do believe it's some kind of mental disease, some kind of wiring in us that gets, whether we have it from, I think there's an element of both, that we have it when we're born with it through genetics and things like that. And then when we have when that collides with trauma or something else, mostly trauma, then that bounces you into this state. It fires it off. But I like to look at it like it's a parasite. I'd heard another guy talk about that, and more that really made a impact on me, because what he said, this thing gets you and it hijacks your operating system. It really ain't me driving anymore. Once that stuff is in me, it's not me. Everybody sees Dan. It looks like Dan. And you change kind of slow too, or at least I did. I didn't change like overnight from being one thing to another. It was a gradual thing. So everybody changes a little over time, and nobody really knew that I was in the kind of problems that I was in. Because from that 19-year-old DUI, I got another DUI when I was 38. So I went another exactly 19 years before I got in trouble with the law again. And to me, that's not having a problem, right? I mean, everybody gets a DUI once in a while.
That's actually pretty amazing, considering that people know a little bit about you. You're in a small city, you know what I mean? It's hard to hide in a small town.
Yep.
So that's pretty amazing that you lasted that long.
I had a heck of a run, and to be honest with you, that window of time was fun. I had a great time, man. We were doing all kinds of fun stuff. And it really wasn't dragging me down. I'd have the hangovers and the dope sick kind of stuff for here and there, but I didn't know what any of that was really. I just muscled through it, until I could, do whatever the next substance was on the table. I'd have told you I didn't have a problem. I'm sitting there like, let's say at that 38-year-old DUI, I had this nice house. I had 2.3 kids. I had a dog, a beautiful wife. I'd held a job at that time for coming up on 20 years. I'd held the same job as an engineer. Guys with problems don't have all this stuff I got. You can't have all this stuff I got if you got that problem. So, I could bounce that off pretty easy. And I did the same thing that time, in the small town too. If you got a little money and know a few people, man, you pay your way out of it. and you get your wrist slapped, and I would never say that I wish my consequences were harder, and you have to ride, you have to take the journey you get. But I do wonder once in a while if I'd had some bigger consequences early on throughout that, if maybe maybe I'd have pulled the nose up earlier. I kind of doubt it, but those things float through my mind.
I don't think that that's, I mean, unless it was so drastic that you hit years in the beginning, but it's crazy how far you'll go.
Yeah.
And like how far down you'll go before you realize that, oh, geez, this isn't working.
Yeah, right. Yep. I mean, we will just manage the shit out of it. And I think that's like that parasite thing where it's hijacked my operating system. And I'm not in, there's this entity that's got the joystick called Dan, and it's doing the driving. It's moving me around and doing things. Cause I remember, I'll say, I was going to ask you this question. That'd be presumptuous on my, but how many times you wake up the next morning saying, I ain't going to do it today. I'm going to take a day off.
Oh man, they all started that way. Yeah. They all started like that.
Right. Yep.
And then something happened on the way to the bathroom.
Right. Yep.
or there was a bag right close by, and that's shit. Let's wait till tomorrow.
Yep. So I'll kind of jump up to what happened. I have this tendency to want to put the timeline in, but I've actually written out the timeline, and I can't make the timeline work. I have no idea the chronology of like what year it was. So I just quit even trying. Sometime in the mid 2000s, my mom's had a lot of health problems all her life. When I was 10 years old, I hid around the corner right here in this house again, while mom told her, brothers and sisters and brother-in-laws and sister-in-laws that she had breast cancer. I'm 10 years old. I'm supposed to be in the backyard playing, but I don't. I do the little sneaky thing where I went around the corner and let the back door slam and stood there and listened. And that scared me bad. I remember because I didn't know cancer, death sentence. My mom's going to die. My mom's going to die. And because I wasn't supposed to hear it, I couldn't go asking about it. And they were trying to like protect me from it. And so she's had all these health problems all her life. And actually, by putting some pieces of the puzzle together, I found out that she had been taking prescription pain medication for a good piece of her life for one reason or another. A back surgery, a shoulder surgery, rehab from cancer, mastectomies, and just one thing after another. And, sometime in the mid 2000s, man, the drinking had stopped working for me. I couldn't smoke dope anymore because as soon as I smoked a little bit of that, it would put me out. I'm done for the day. I could smoke a little bit at the end of the night when I was ready to go to bed, but I couldn't smoke at any other time in the day because I was done. And the alcohol just wasn't working. I started getting these headaches every time I drank, and I thought the next beer would cure that. And the next beer, and there was now and again where I got enough of them in me that the headache went away till the morning. And then you're trying to drink it away again. And that's what I mean by the alcohol stopping working. It was no longer making me feel good, but I still was drinking beer every day. I mean, I think back to the drinking and driving I did, through a big chunk of that, I don't know, 15 so years or something. If I was driving and it was past noon anyway, I had a beer between my legs and some cooler full of them in the back seat. I did that with my kids in the car, and, I just had no regard for that being a problem. And I couldn't stop, really didn't even give it a lot of thought. I went to church for a while, and I didn't drink for like 5 months, and I patted myself on the back that I'd done such a good job as last 5 months. I deserved a 6-pack. And, I was back at the liquor store after the 6-pack getting more, just the same old thing.
I just thought about that the other day, man. I was talking to somebody and I was like, the crazy thing about it is when we start doing good and I haven't touched anything for a while. I'm making some money. I've been working, I've been doing good. I deserve it.
Yep.
I deserve to treat myself.
Yep.
Oh man, that game is so dangerous.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. You think that's the same thing where I start convincing myself I don't have a problem because I've been doing so well, and that's it. I do remember just straight up doing that going, damn, Dan, you've been good for 5 months, man. You've been working at church. I poured myself into the church pretty well. I was doing service, and I see how some of that was keeping me sober because I was actually partaking and being a part of. Right. And that's another critical element throughout this whole thing in my life of trying to be a part of. That's what I was searching for when I was drinking and doping. I was wanting to do it with people. I really wasn't alone. I did drink alone later on, but for the most part, I was wanting to be in the party and to be in community with people. And you could find that anywhere drinking. So mom had a back surgery, and they were watching my kids. My kids were real little. Maybe 2 and 5 or something. And they would always watch my kids every day. We didn't have to have any daycare. And my wife was working night shift, weekends only. They called it WOW, weekends only, something or another. Work only weekends. That's what it was. Work only weekends. And she could get in full-time pay and full-time benefits just by working all night long Friday night and all night long Saturday night. So she would be off work during the week, and I would work during the week. And a whole lot of those times, my parents had my kids on Fridays specifically because Angie wanted to sleep so she could stay up all night. So she'd bring the kids over to my parents, and I come in and I have my typical 5-6 beers between my employer and home. And I walked in the house, and I'm kind of pacing around, and just being that uneasy, that restless, irritable, discontent. And I remember wandering back into my mom's bedroom, and I saw 2 prescription pill bottles sitting there. And for whatever reason, I walked over and picked them up, and I looked at them, and both of them said for pain. And I had some pain. I really did. Not the kind of pain that's meant to treat. But so I can remember this bigger than anything too, man, because I started learning to see those pills and know the imprints on them. And, I almost think I could smell them. If I was at your house, I could smell if you had any or not. And I shook out 2 big pills, and I shook out 2 little pills, and I put the lids back on them, and I looked at them, and I thought, what the hell, I'll take the 2 little ones and put the big ones in my pocket. Well, I found out later on, it was 2 OxyContin 40s. Oh. And that, like, my first, I've been hurt a bunch when I was a kid. I was accident prone, and that was another pattern I put together after a while, that mom would always insist that we get the pain pills at the doctor's offices and at the ERs and things. And I wanted to be tough and tell them I didn't need it. I don't need that. And mom would say, yes, you're going to get those. If you need them, da, da, da. And I remember I'd get home, and she'd give me one or something, and then the rest of them disappear. I'd never see them again. And I didn't ever think about that. And I love my mom to death, and I would fight somebody to protect her honor. But this is what happened. This is just the story. It got really sad after a while, what that did to her, because she wasn't the addict like me and you were, but she was still dependent on this medication, and she was a professional, and did a lot for the community. But, and that's what I said earlier, when it said, no matter what side of the tracks you're from, this stuff gets its hooks in you and you're done. So I took those 2 Oxy 40s, and by the time I got home, which I didn't live but 2 miles away from here, at some point, man, boom, everything started working again, man. I mean, I was, what? Everything is good. And me and the kids had a party that night. They didn't do any drinking, but I sure did. And I have pictures from that night. There's a picture of us all in red bandana do-rags that I know is from that night. The next night, Saturday night, same thing. Wife leaves. I know I got those 2 big pills. I knock them down, and although I really didn't notice its differences, it gave me the same effect.
Yeah.
So I found the golden key again, just like when I was a kid and I couldn't fit in, and I got a little liquor in me or got some dope in me, and I could fit in, and I could be, the proverbial, I could dance with the girls, I could talk to the dudes. That same wave hit me when I found those pain pills. And out of all the drugs that I did, the acid, the cocaine, the meth, and I don't even know what all else, man. I never found heroin for whatever reason. Never found that, prior to this. But the minute I found those pain pills, I was like, if I can get me a lifetime supply of those, I will be just fine. So I muscle my way through a week, and I come over to mom and dad's house and take a couple of her pills home for the weekend. And, I'd have pretty good weekends every weekend. After a while, my mom started calling me and saying that her medications was disappearing. And would I come over and talk to her about it? Well, I thought I was in trouble. She called me come over and talk about it because we were trying to figure out who was taking them. We would sit here and brainstorm, and there's no joke about like, I'll steal your drugs and help you look for them. I did that with my mom.
Yeah, I think it goes, what's the difference between an alcoholic and a drug addict? An alcoholic will steal your shit and just bolt. A drug addict will steal your shit and help you look for it.
Yep. Yep. And I did that with my mom. She got one of those lock boxes, so she could start keeping it in it. And it didn't take her long to leave the combination on it, So I spied that out, and I just go in and now they're disappearing out of her lockbox and she really can't figure that out. Never did blame me, never did she think that little Dan, how I think our parents always look at us as little kids, even when we're adults. Mm-hmm. I'd never dawned on her that it was me doing it. So that escalated, and what happened was I went to everybody I knew's house over time, my aunts, uncles, friends, and if they had some pills, they didn't have them when I left. I was lifted, and man, it was like a gold mine. I couldn't believe it. I mean, it's like everywhere I went, here's 30 of them, 28 out of a 30 script sitting up there, and they're 2 years old, and I felt good about that too, because there was a couple times when it was current medication that somebody needed, and I actually did have a little thing where I was like, I didn't like taking somebody's medicine they needed. Mm-hmm. I still did it, but I wouldn't take them all. If it was an old script, I'd take them all. Yeah. I finally ended up wearing everybody out, I just stole everybody's pain medication that they had laying around, everybody I knew. And that, again, the chronology doesn't work, but that I remember that being a fair piece of time that I was able to do that. I'm able to get my drugs for free. And life was pretty good, from all accounts.
Now, of those family members or other people that you were going to their house, would you just like show up randomly, like, hey, out of the blue, what's going on? And
both. Sometimes it'd be because we were there at Christmas, or sometimes it'd be because of whatever, I'm a handyman today, and that's half of my primary occupation. I also have a wood shop in my backyard where I make custom woodwork. But my dad taught me to do all this stuff. So there would be a lot of times where Dad would say, hey, wouldn't you run over here to Bill's house with me and help me fix his dryer, put a new heater element in the dryer? And I'd go over there. So I'd have these like golden opportunities. I almost thought I was like being handed these opportunities, almost like God was sending me here. So I had these fantastic avenues, and it accelerated from there though, because I started doing some funny things, man. There was a few times when I saw people with their arm in a cast. I remember one old lady had her arm in a cast, and I saw her at Kroger's, and I followed her home, and I let her get in the house, and then I parked my truck down the street and rang her doorbell and told. Cell phones were just beginning to be popular. It was like early 2000s, around here. Some people had them, some people didn't. I'd ring her doorbell and told her my car's down there, broke down. Is there any chance I can come in and use your telephone? And she said, yeah, because I could. I was a con man. I remember you saying the same thing, put on the smile, clean cut young guy, let me in the house to use the telephone. Oh, can I use the restroom before I go? And go in the bathroom. At 90% of times they were in the medicine cabinets in bathrooms. The other times they're in the kitchens. And I'd manipulate that woman so that I could get where I needed to get. I found her medication and took it. She didn't know me from Adam. And I did that a few times. I actually had success doing that. Of course, sometimes I struck out too. You go in there and can't find it wherever it is. I couldn't get my hands on it. And about that same time, I started breaking in houses.
Now, I got one more question. You can. Did anybody ever confront you?
There were some times in that window that I got caught. One lady was almost wonder about how close to tell, but my kids were in Cub Scouts and I was one of the leaders, and there was another guy was another den leader, and I took my kids over to this guy's mother-in-law's house because I knew she had some, and my kids play with their kids, and I went in and I chatted her up and all that and manipulated her so where I could get her where I needed her to be so I could look where I needed to look. And I shook out a handful of them, and I thought, and it was a bunch. And I went out to the car, and I was going to just walk out to the car real quick. I was going to throw them under the floor mat and then go back in. Mm-hmm. And when I threw them under the floor mat, I turned around and she was standing right there behind me. And she held her hand out like, give them back. Yeah. And she told me I needed to leave, and I grabbed up the kids and I left, and about a half hour my phone started ringing off the hook by that guy that I knew, the other den leader, and then the head of the little scout troop we were in called me and left me a message and told me it would be a good idea if I resigned my position and go get some help. So, I got effectively fired. At that time, I was actually a Cub Master, and I got fired from being a Cub Master, and he tried to help me. They didn't call law on me. And again, this thing about consequences again. And that's why today when I meet somebody that needs help with their drinking and drugging, I actually celebrate if they got some heavy duty consequences on them. Because if they do, they got something to work for. If it's just that the wife is mad, I don't find that to be enough. It seems we have to have some real consequences on our shoulders before we change. And, over and over again, I didn't get, they let me off the hook. I went into somebody's house down into near our cabin out in the country. The neighbors, he had them too. And I manipulated my way in there and got some. And when I got home, his wife called me and said, she called and I didn't answer. And she texted me and she said, the text said, answer the phone or I'm calling the cops. And so I answered the phone and she said, Dan, I know what's going on. You need to get some help, buddy. You need to get some help. And I said, I promise I will. I promise. And just went on my merry way again. So I had a number of times where I did get confronted and let off the hook.
Yeah, that promise, I promise. I'm going to change. It's going to be different. I promise.
Yep.
Well, I've used that one a million times until it wouldn't work anymore.
Your tail feathers are on fire, and the only thing I need to do is get them put out, and I'll do whatever it takes to get them put out. And, and I got off scot-free a few times. I will tell you, I'll go ahead and say that as a result of my 9 step amends, I have went around to everybody I could and owned up to that and made things right where I could. That's a humbling experience to go around and do that. So I got divorced. I actually went into, and I do know this date. This was in 2011. I went to AA off a bad weekend. My wife and the kids were in Tybee Island, South Carolina, or it might be Georgia, South Carolina. And we went there for spring break vacation. Beforehand, I was able to finagle my doctor into giving me enough, because during this time I could get one of my doctors to give me script too. It would never carry me, but it would fit. Yeah. And I was able to get him to, and sometimes I'd plan that, I wouldn't ask him for some for a while, because I knew that when like this trip was coming up, I want to ask him and he'd give them to me if it had been a while. And he loaded me up. And we went down there and took, I run out on the last day down there. So I'm coming home feeling like crap and, dope sick. And I got home and the wife said something to me that I didn't like. And I yelled at her and stomped out of the house and went and didn't come home all night. And I came home the next morning and pleaded for her forgiveness. And that's the first time I told her I had a drinking problem. I didn't tell her anything about the pills, but I told her I had a drinking problem. And she advised that I call my doctor and get some Ativan or something, or get some benzos to come off of the alcohol. She was a nurse. I called my doctor and he laughed at me and he said, Dan, I'm really having trouble giving you drugs for your drug problem. And he said, really, there's nothing I can do for you. And I remember like in the big book, it says something about the gates of hell clanged behind him whenever this person told him that there was no hope for him. And I remember that feeling. I'd never read the big book. I didn't know anything about it, but I remember that same feeling when he told me, there's really nothing I can do for you. And he let that hang for a minute. And he said, but what I can do is I can refer you to a treatment center. I can get you in a treatment center, and have you ever heard of AA? And I lied and said no. And I went to a little outpatient thing and started going to some meetings. And actually out of that, I got a year of sobriety in 2011, 2012. I didn't drink for a whole year. I did some other things, but I didn't drink. And I went and stood up in front of a group and got my 1 year token in front of them as a farce, but I truly hadn't drank. And we were in Alcoholics Anonymous. We were not in Narcotics Anonymous. We were not. And I knew that it wasn't right, but it's still the same thing of this con man and this bigger than the rules, and I'll figure a way to do what I need to do. When I relapsed, my wife didn't know that I actually relapsed, and I started drinking again, and she could just tell the change in me. And she'd seen sober Dan and liked him really well. And when drunk Dan started behaving again, she was done. And she left. We ended up getting divorced. And I spiraled hard. We got divorced and we separated in 2013. Divorce was final in 2014. One kind of funny thing about that story is that my divorce was final like March the 5th of 2014. And on March the 8th of 2014, my company sent me for an all paid expenses 3-week stay in Bangkok, Thailand. Yeah. It's like a reverse bachelor party. And look at how some of these things lined up. I was sober for about 90 days when that happened. And I flew over there, and every night the guys I was working with, we had an office in Thailand, and we would go downstairs to an open air bar, and the guys would go out and get street food, and come back. And for 3 days, I said no. And I just drank my Coke. And that fourth day, I turned my glass over because they drink it out of glasses, and they drink the beer out of a great big, like a wine bottle, and they put a couple ice cubes in the glass, and you pass around the bottle and keep yourself full. And so I turned my glass over, and one of my friends over there, who I actually still stay in contact with, he tried to talk me out of drinking. He had known enough about me, and he's like, no, Dan, no. And I just give a guy a look, don't fucking tell me what to do.
Yeah. And, you'd already made up your mind. It's like now you're in the way.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And he did. He backed right up. The Thais are real submissive to some extent. Real demure, and so he wasn't. He tried, and I love him for trying to, because he was the only one that would tell me the truth. The rest of them wouldn't do it. But once I looked at him and told him, he said, "Okay, man." That was really a fun trip too, man. Running around Bangkok, drinking and doing the things Bangkok, Thailand has to offer. There's they say loose whiskey and cheap women, or maybe it's the other way around. It's fun.
It's cheap.
Yep.
You can. I don't know if Thailand's the same as like the Philippines, but I think both of them are kind of the same thing. I mean, you can go there. It's expensive to get there, but to live once you're there is pretty reasonable.
Yeah, right. We would go out to eat with 6 or 8 of us, and we would eat and get drunk, and it'd be $30. It was crazy cheap to drink and stuff. It did take me a couple days to figure out they didn't sell alcohol until 2 p.m. every day. So one day I had to leave early from work because I wasn't feeling good, and I'll come back to my hotel, and I was walking down the street from the train stop to my hotel, and I stopped in one of them stores and grabbed a couple of those big tall bottles of beer and set them on the counter, and they're going, "Nope." And I'm like, "Why you mean no? Hold on a minute." you know who I am? And finally they pointed at something and I saw, and it was 2 p.m. So it was like 1 o'clock. So I had to go up there and wait, drum my fingers until 2 o'clock. And I was leaving there and I told myself a whole time, and I drank right up to just hours before my flight home. I said, okay, Dan, we'll just stop now. And, when you get on that airplane, we'll turn this back off and go back to being sober. They fly us business class, which is much like first class. And because it's like a 30-hour trip, man, it's a long lot of being on an airplane to get from here to Thailand. And sat down in that business class. When they come up, the gal come up, said, "Mr. Reeves, what would you like to drink?" And I said, "Give me a gin and tonic." And okay, Dan, we'll drink, because this is a long flight. You'll need to drink to get this long flight under your belt. But when you get off this airplane, that's it. We're going to stop. We ain't taking this back to town. And I don't know how this happens either, man, but this is the truth. We're like on approach. And I remember that I had, back when they used to put refills on your pain pills, they don't do that no more. I had a refill sitting at the pharmacy, and I remembered that at that time as we're coming into town. So as soon as the plane touched down, I could fire up my telephone. I did what I needed to do on there to get that refill directed to the 24 hours pharmacy, because and that's interesting, because the one I usually go to is not a 24-hour one, but the one across town is a 24-hour pharmacy. Had that redirected. They said be ready in about 30 minutes. I'll go walking out the gate, and my dad has brought my two kids, and they're excited to have dad back, and they're little, and they're probably 8 and 10 at this time, and they're coming at me with their arms open and wanting to hug dad, and the only thing I can think about is getting to that pharmacy. Told dad, "Hey, I run out of my blood pressure medicine. We got to run by the pharmacy on the way home." And he said, "Okay." And so went in, got some of those, and I'm back on it again. That was in March of 14. When I got home, I got me a new girlfriend. Usually had to have one of them, it's less like a drug, right? I'm not okay unless I got a girl. I can't stand to be alone. And I don't, at some level, I don't count myself worthy as a man unless I got a woman. Codependency is just at the hilt. And so I got a girlfriend, and I even told her the night I met her online at one of them online dating services, and we met up. She asked me if I'd meet her at a bar that her friends owned, and I went over there, and I knew that wasn't going to work out real well either, because at this point I'm pretending to be sober. I'm not letting people see me drink. And I go over there, and I even told her I got there, and I don't know what to do at a bar besides buy a beer. And she wasn't there yet, so I got a beer. And I was sitting at the bar, and she come up and she ordered, we introduced, and she sat down, and I told her that night, I really shouldn't be drinking. She's like, "Why?" I go, "Well, I had a lot of trouble with my drinking." She says, "Why are you drinking?" I'm like, "That's what we do, what else are you going to do?" She should have ran, right? She should have ran. She should have said, "Enough of this, I'm out of here." And she didn't. And she hung around, and it was June the 18th of 2014. I'm sitting in this very living room with this girl. Her daughter and my daughter are asleep back in my daughter's bedroom. My son is asleep in his bedroom, and it's around 9 p.m. And I'm sitting on the couch with her, drinking beer, watching TV. And I told her, I said, "I'll be back in just a minute." And I did something, because I have one particular place that I could always get to pills. And it was the neighbors across the street. They're like in their 90s. And I have been over there one time. He'd fell out of his motorized scooter. And because I was the longtime neighborhood guy, she called me up and asked me if I could come over and help him get him back up in his scooter. And I said, "Yeah, this is not this night. This is prior to this." And I go over there to help. And when I get in that house, remember earlier I said I can smell them pain pills when they're in your house. It's like I can read the prescription label from 30 feet away. I don't know if that's true or not, but it sure seemed like it. And So I manipulated them around that day with the scooter and got them in the other room. And yep, I'll be damned if these ain't what I like. And I shook me out a couple of them. So I would make frequent visits over there. I wasn't hitting them real hard because the old dude needed it. Remember I told you I wouldn't want to take all your medication if I thought you were currently using it. And so what I started doing, I went over there and, sometimes I just felt odd to knock on the door at like 11 p.m. and things like that. And they left their door unlocked. And and I would walk in their house while they're sleeping and just walk in the house and go back and get a handful of it and walk right back out. I remember a couple times it was earlier in the evening and they were both hard of hearing and they had the TV up so loud you could hear it from outside. And they're up next to the TV sitting in chairs. He's in a scooter. She's sitting in a chair and they're watching Jeopardy. So that had to be between 7:30 and 8 o'clock here. And I slipped in right behind them while they're sitting there watching TV. Over time, them pills moved from the kitchen back to his bedroom because they started getting onto it. And I'd get them out. They started locking the door after a while. One night I went over there and I tried, it was open every time, right? Open. And one time I went over and it was locked. What in the hell are they doing?
The nerve of them.
And so, being the guy I am, man, I looked around and luckily they left a key under a brick right outside the door for me. And got the key out from under the brick, opened up the door, went in to get what I needed, come back out, lock the door, put the key back under the brick. And then before long, the key ain't under the brick no more.
So they know it's you.
They know something's happening. They don't know it's me.
Mm.
Just like my mom when she knew pills were missing, but they didn't know who it was. And on that June 18th date, I told my girlfriend, hang on a minute, I'll be right back. And I slipped out the back door and I twinkle-toed across the street. And I went over there and the door was unlocked tonight. And I opened up the door. The house is pitch black. Get back to the old man's bedroom. He's sitting there. He kept his TV on all night long. And he's sleeping in the bed, right? I mean, I could see his face. If he would open his eyes, he'd see me. And slip open the dresser drawer, reach in there, get some of what I need. And I turned around to a guy holding pepper spray 6 inches from my face and just blasted me.
Oh.
And he had pepper spray and he had a baseball bat. It makes my heart start beating every time I tell this story. It starts thumping. So he starts getting into me with the ball bat and my face is just blasted with that pepper spray. I mean, I am, I don't know if you've ever been sprayed with that stuff, but it is awful. But we're in a little hallway, so he can't really get me good with the bat, You can't really wind up, and I bulldoze past him and push him out of the way and get out. And he did get me one time in the back as I was running off. He hit me really pretty good right in the back. And I come out of his house and I didn't run in the direction of my house. I ran a different direction, right? Because he knows who I am. You know why he knows who I am? He caught me doing this back around Christmas of the same year, the year before. And that night was a similar kind of thing. And I was really drunk and he threw me to the ground and he pinned me down on the ground. His knee was in my back and he's telling some girl to call 911. And he says, "Who are you?" And I told him what my name was. And when the minute I said Dan Reeves, I felt the pressure come up off of his knee. And he got up and he looked at me and he said, "Leave," and let me go. I remember coming home. I watched the cops come. He made up a story. He didn't know who it was. He come over and tried to offer me that help again, just like these other people did. "Dude, you need to get some help." "I will. I promise. I will." And I got off the hook once more. But this time, he's not going to be so easy on me. And tonight I get the pepper spray and the ball bat. And I take off running. And when I was a kid, I had a period of time when I was bullied. And some of these memories come back upon remembering the guy who I first smoked dope with, him passing away a couple of days ago, Thursday. One of the memories that I remember is that I was getting... me and another guy were waiting for my friend Tony to get home from work, and we're sitting in front of his mom and dad's house, and the cops pull up on us. And like 3 or 4 cars just surround us. And we're getting ready to have a really good weekend. When they emptied out the car, we had a half bag of pot, a couple bottles of whiskey. We had some beer iced down, and we also had 8 hits of acid. Me and Troy couldn't wait for Tony to get home from work, so we already took one. And we got took downtown. Another time I got slapped on the wrist. I didn't get in any trouble for that. They wanted to know where we got it, and we made up a story. And a couple of days later, Tony's mom and dad get raided for the pot they're selling, and that got hung on me, that I narked them out. So from that point, me and Tony's friendship soured, and every time he seen me, he would want to hit me in the jaw, and sometimes he did. And I never was a fighter. I was a runner. When the fight or flight stuff happened, my butt pedals out of there. There was a few times in my high school when I didn't take no for an answer from a girl, and their older brothers didn't like that very much. And so for a while, I had this little period of time. And this had left my memory almost completely until I started thinking about Tony's, when I was telling somebody about Tony the other day. There was a period of time where it wasn't safe for me to be anywhere. I needed to be looking over my shoulder a lot, because I had about a half a dozen dudes who were going to kick my ass if I got caught, if they saw me. I remember getting caught in a convenience store, and one of them comes in, and I got to run around that convenience store until I lose them and then get out the door. And that running, I remember, and the shame around that running from these guys instead of standing and fighting. Probably the reality was, if I would have fought them once, that probably would have been all they needed. I don't think, chances are they weren't going to kill me. I don't know. I know you got into one of those where your story about that fight and goddamn near getting killed, right? In your fight.
Well, no. It would have, if we ran across each other one more time, it would have ended up either somebody wouldn't have walked away, and it would have been me probably.
Yeah. Well, where all your buddies beat up the one guy.
Oh yeah. That's right. In high school. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking of, was that thing where, sometimes people do get hurt real bad then. But anyway, I always ran. And when I was running out of that house that night, I remember that exact same running feeling I had when I was a kid and being chased by bullies or somebody's wanting to whip me. I don't know why that flooded over me, but that's a piece of my life, of that shame wrapped up in that being a big pussy, that I wouldn't fight. And here I am running again, and I'm running away from something that I had no business doing. And I knew I was going to get in trouble this time. And I went around, and I ran around the town. I ended up having to take off my shirt because it was so full of pepper spray, and like mucus comes out your ears when they hit you with that pepper spray. I mean, it is just everywhere. I was in people's backyards trying to use their garden hose and wash this stuff off because the guy didn't catch me. I got away. I remember walking around going, thinking to myself, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to fucking do. I don't know what to do. I don't have a watch. I don't have a phone. I don't have anything, man. I'm in loafers and short pants. And I would come back to my house. One time I come back to my house and I saw the cops were here. You could see the lights are flashing in the trees and this. And I would go back away, and then I'd come back and the cops were still here. At one point they had a car parked behind my house and in front of my house with the headlights painted up the front and back. So if I would come in, they'd see me cross the beam of light. But remember what I said about knowing your neighborhood? How when you know your neighborhood, you ain't going to get caught, right? So when he chased me and this stuff and this deal with the cops, if I didn't want to be found, they weren't going to find me. I know where to hide around here. And so finally I come back a little later in the night. I know what time it is because I didn't know what time it was at the time, but when I got back in the house, that helped me put the timeline together. But I come home and the cops were gone, but every light in my house was on. I mean, my house was lit up like somebody was having a party, and it was way too late for that. So I slipped around the side of the house and I looked into the driveway, and I remember being surprised that this girl Renee's car was still in my driveway. I don't know what she was going to do, but I told her I'd be back in just a minute, and that was hours ago. And my mom and dad's car was in the driveway. So I sit back in the backyard underneath this pine tree again going, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. And I hear my back door come open. And my dad comes out and he's got 2 5-gallon buckets. And he starts walking down the stepping stone path that will lead to the garbage. And I'm sitting underneath that pine tree right along that path. And I remember sitting down, man, and I had myself wadded up in a ball so small, trying to be as little as I possibly could. So possibly he would walk by me and not see me because there wasn't no getting up and moving. And I was just trying to, I wasn't looking up. I wasn't doing anything. I was just had my arms wrapped around my knees and just wadded up there in a ball. And I heard them 2 5-gallon buckets hit the ground. And I looked up and he said, Dan, is that you? I said, yeah, it's me. He said, are you okay? Are you hurt? And that was not, for whatever reason, those words impacted me like nothing before. That was not what I was expecting to hear. Are you okay? Are you hurt? I couldn't look at him. It was a second later, I felt him sit down next to me and put his hand on my knee. And he said, let's go in, take a shower, hit the sack. We'll deal with this tomorrow. And that's what I did. I got up. I walked in his house. My mom's was in here, eyes all swole up from crying. That girl sitting here, her eyes are all swole up from crying. What was in those buckets was glass. And after I got away from that guy ran over here to my house. And he raked the side lights out up and down both sides of my front door and busted out the big round window. And he come in this house looking for me. He thought I came here. So here's this girl in the bathroom and she hears the house get broke into. And I've been gone for a while. And she runs back to the bedrooms and hunkers down to protect those kids from whatever just come in this house. And they met halfway down the hallway and had no idea who each other was. And that could have been a really bad moment, either direction, you know, and that was me that put them two people that had those two innocent people right in a spot that could have been a deadly spot if situation went wrong. He'd come in the house and he had broke everything glass he could with that ball bat. There's a lamp sitting over here. It's still bent and crooked, and I keep it around when he hit it, and it's still bent. I still keep it. I don't know why. I come in the house. That's what my mom and dad was out here cleaning everything up, and he's putting styrofoam and tape and bags and stuff on the broken glass, the windows from the exterior, and I took a shower, and I crawled in bed with that girl, and my mom and dad went home, and I woke up the next morning. For whatever reason, I took another shower, had to go to work that day, got up, took a shower, got dressed for work, went back out in the backyard, tipped up the rock that I'd hid all them pills underneath of last night, throwed a half a dozen of them in my mouth and swallowed them, stuck the rest of them in my pocket, and I went on with my day. There's a line in the big book that says we can't remember the suffering and humiliation of a week or a month ago. And, you know, to me, I couldn't remember the suffering and humiliation of last night. And there I am taking them pills again. I put the girl and my kids in my car and had them leave. And I took her car and drove her car out of here because I was going to have to drive by that house, right? And if he was going to stop somebody, he was going to end up stopping her, not me. And went up. Kind of to fast forward this a little bit, that was what happened. That night is where everything shifted for me. I didn't know what to do. The detectives were coming here, knocking on my door, and I had called my divorce lawyer and had told him what I'd done. And they hooked me up with a criminal lawyer in the same firm. And I talked to him, and he said the cops would come, but I don't talk to them, and we'll just wait and see how this goes down. And was not too awful long. The lawyer was exactly right. Before too awful long, a warrant came out for my arrest, and he arranged for me to turn myself in. And, you know, for about 2 weeks, I was like on the lam, so to speak. You know, he told me, don't get caught in New Albany, because if you get caught and they take you to jail, I don't know when you're getting out. but if we can arrange you turning yourself in, you won't spend a day in jail. You got bail money, right? Yep. Got a little money and know a few people. You don't have to go to jail. And I went down there and faced that judge in the New Albany, Indiana courtroom. And that day, in other words that I'll never forget, he said, the crime I committed, the sentencing guidelines is 6 to 20 years in the Indiana Department of Corrections. There's another one of those gates of hell clanging on me, because, I'm a normal middle class, from all appearances, I'm not the guy that's standing down there in front of the judge. Anybody that knew me didn't know what I was doing. Nobody knew what I was up to. Nobody knew what I was up to. That all went down and go to pre-trial conferences. You've been through some of that legal stuff, and I don't know if you were out on bail during any of it. I think you said you were.
No, only one time, and that was the last time that I went to jail. But all the other times before that, it was I was stuck there. There was no bail for me, and no one was going to pay it anyways.
Yeah, well, I had to come up with $2,500, and that was the 10%. So I guess my bail was $250 or something, $250,000, and I had it and paid it and didn't spend a night in jail. Went through all that pretrial conference stuff, and my lawyer told me they're not putting you in prison for 20 years for this, buddy, but you might do 6.
That's long enough, man. 6 years. I mean, I think the whole total wasn't, like, from all the things that I've done in the 3 years that I had, was probably adds up to about 5. So it wasn't even 6 years. Yeah. We was doing this little dance and where you'd have to go down to these pretrial conferences, and I wasn't getting to participate in any of that. You go down there and meet, and lawyer would tell you sit here, and he'd disappear for a little while, and he'd come back out, take you in another room, and tell me, they want you to do 6 years, and there's been a lot of your neighbors have been down there, and they're all lobbying for you to go to prison. And so I don't really know. And sometimes he's like, I don't think we're going to do any better than that. And one of my friends said, well, 6 years, you only do 3. I got, you do it then. Yeah, screw you. And then it actually did come down to 3 years after a little while. And my friend said the same thing. Well, then you only had to do a year and a half. And I'm pretending like I'm sober then. But every time I'd had to go down there, I would take the entire day off of work. I would go down there by myself. I wouldn't let nobody come with me. I didn't want any support, And I go down there, and I would leave there, and I'd go to a liquor store, and I'd get as much booze as I could, that I could drink today, and I would get hammered the rest of the day. I just couldn't. That guilt, shame, and remorse and all that was sitting on me, I didn't know any other way to deal with it. So I would just get smashed and wake up the next day and go on with my life, just like I had done a million times before. Yesterday's over, move on. So I couldn't go to back to AA. My ego wouldn't let me do that. I had that 1 year sobriety, and there was something in me nudging me, telling me that maybe if I did that, if I would go back there, maybe those people could help me. But I couldn't go. I couldn't go show up, man. My ego would not let me walk back into rooms. And my original sponsor was posting on Facebook about having a meditation meeting. And I thought, well, maybe I'll go to that. And I didn't know anything about any of that really. And I remember pulling up one time and I couldn't go in, and I left. And then the next Saturday, I'm negotiating with myself. Come on, Dan, get in there. You can do it. And I walk in there, and who's in there? But everybody I know from AA, or not everybody, but that's who was in the meditation meeting. And that broke the ice for me to be able to get back, because I went in there and I told them people a little bit about what was going on, the trouble I had gotten into. And they started helping me and wanting to show up for court and wanting to do things to help me. And I started continuing do my pretend to be sober act. A friend of mine at work had told me about a meeting. It was on Tuesday nights, and he had gotten in the same kind of trouble. He got a chance to go to Thailand a while back, right here in the same time frame. And he was like me. He could stop for a little bit, and then he'd go off the rails.
Well, he was getting ready to go to Thailand, and he was driving up to the airport in Cincinnati. It's just a little bit closer to his house than what Louisville was. And he was going to drink on the way to the airport. Well, he got so loaded, he crashed into the airport. Not actually into the building, but out in the parking lot, he ran in, and so he caught a DUI on that in the parking. Never made it. It was like a 10 grand ticket. I remember work was not too happy about that ticket getting forfeited because he didn't make it. So he's going through a similar kind of thing as I am, and I guess he was sober and I was pretending to be, and he kept on telling me that I should come to this meeting with him on Tuesday night, and so finally, at some point, I nudged him and I said, "Hey, man, at work," I said, "Is that meeting tonight?" And he said, "Yeah." I said, "Can I go with you?" And he said, "Sure." And he stalled for a minute, which kind of flipped me out because I finally got the guts to ask him, right? And I finally got my ego in position to ask him. And he goes, "Oh, man, it's not at the church tonight. It's in some guy's basement." And I was like, "Well, can I still go?" And he said, yeah, you can still go. And so we went, and I followed him over there, and we went down into this basement, and my life shifted. It was a huge, big shift. I walked into that AA meeting. It was all men. It was in this basement. And I started hearing guys share at some level that I had never heard before. I heard people that I related to it, and I still pretended to be sober. I didn't tell any of them what was going on, but there was something was attracting me back to that meeting. And they did this thing where they said, if everybody who's willing and available to sponsor a guy, please raise your hand. So when they were doing that, I thought, well, that'd make it easy for me to get a sponsor, because if a guy raises his hand, he ain't going to reject me, right? I'd asked some guys to sponsor me, and they told me no. And I thought, well, if these guys are raising their hands, surely they will. But there was one guy that was talking all the time, and I really liked what he said, but that dude never did raise his hand when it came time in the meeting. And time went by, and I'm still doing the dance, and it was a Tuesday, and I go down to court, and I know this sounds crazy, but this is the way it happened. I went down there, and I was going to get some liquor and stuff, but I remembered that it was Tuesday, man, and I knew if I drink, I wouldn't go to that meeting. If I didn't go to that meeting, that'd be the night that some bitch raises his hand. And so I didn't. And I sit with my stuff all day long, and it's the first time that I ever done that. And by the time I got to that meeting, they did a thing in the meeting called a burning desire. Does anybody have anything they need to get off their shoulders, anything they need to talk about that might make them drink tonight or anything like that? And I saw some people in that meeting model what a burning desire was. So I knew it was like that's when I'm supposed to tell them the truth.
Yeah.
So I did. I raised my hand, and I told them guys everything that I was into. And, up until now, I've been going for like 6 weeks or something. And I've been telling them that I've been sober for a while. I had some sobriety in the past and just bullshitting my way through it, And that night I told them the truth and told them what was going on. And that group rallied up around me that night. I remember a guy saying, it's my experience that guys that do the 12 steps and practice these principles in their lives, they don't go to jail. And if you go to jail, we'll come visit you. And so after that meeting that night, we're all doing the fellowship thing after the meeting ended. The meeting was all about me. Everybody was talking to me and sharing to me and giving me that experience, strength, and hope. And after that meeting night, I was standing there, and I looked up, and that dude that never raises his hand was walking right at me. And he walked right up to me that night, and he looked at me, and he said, "Man, that was amazing what you shared tonight." He said, "I want to sponsor you." And some wave hit me, like of some knowing that like I had a lifeline here. And he said, "But are you free on Tuesday nights? Because that's the only night I have." And I'm like, "Well, my schedule's pretty full. I don't know if I'm free or not." I said, "Yeah, I'm free on Tuesday nights." And he said, "Do you have a big book?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Is this guy writing in it or anything?" I said, "Oh, yeah, man, I got it tabbed out. I got highlighted all this." He goes, "Get rid of it, get a new one." And I'm like, that don't make any sense. He said, "Here's my telephone number. I want you to call me every day. And I want you to call me between 1 and 3, because that's what time I can talk on the phone." So the very next day I called him at 2 o'clock, because that's exactly between 1 and 3. And I did what I know now, and I didn't know this. This is rearview mirror. But what I did is I jumped in this dude's hip pocket with every bit of faith I had that maybe this guy could help me get out of the thing I was in. I really didn't think there was any way for that to happen. I'd asked for home incarceration down there. We were trying to negotiate and try to find some way I wouldn't have to go to prison. And they said, nope, you're not going to do home incarceration in that house because you was breaking into that house. and all my neighbors wanted me to go to jail, or not all of them, but that's what I was being told. They were all lobbying for me. So, I'm still living here, I'm persona non grata big time, right, man? I got so much shame every time I drive up and down the street. I think everybody's looking out the windows at me, and they probably were. My sponsor said to me, why don't you ask him for home incarceration again? I said, Christopher, I've already done that. They've said no. They're not going to let me. He said, why don't you ask him one more time? What's it going to hurt? Okay. So I called the lawyer and I started this habit of doing what this dude suggested I do. And I called him, and my lawyer laughed at me. He said, we've been down that road, Dan. You know the deal. And I said, well, would you ask one more time? And he said, yeah. Now, the courts didn't know what I was doing. They didn't know I'd surrendered to this process. I'd really pushed all my chips to the middle of the table like a Hail Mary pass at the end of the ballgame because I thought it was over. And I started doing what the sponsor told me. And that lawyer called me back a week later, and he said, hey, they said it would be cool. And he said, what would you think about a deal that went 1 year home incarceration? I was like, 1 fucking year. 1 year home incarceration, 1 year of probation, and the third one will be suspended pending successful completion of the first 2. And I said, I'll take that. And he goes, only problem is you can't do home incarceration at your house. And so I'm like, well, what do I do? And my sponsor said, maybe I go live in one of these recovery. Louisville is a hotbed of recovery, man. There's so many recovery centers and men's recovery homes and stuff that guys go live at. And he said, you could do that. And he said, any chance you could go move in with your mom and dad? Oh no, I'll ask them. And I did. And they said, that'd be cool, that I could stay with them. So here I am, 45 years old, man. And we cut this deal, and I'm getting ready to, next week is my sentencing, the formal sentencing. And so I go over to mom and dad's, and I'm going to clean up the back bedroom and start getting my shit moved in there, because that's where I'm figuring I'm living for the next year. I told my ex-wife what had happened. Everybody knew what was going on. And, that way I could continue to make my mortgage payments, and my dad could come over here and help keep the house up while I'm gone for a year. And I'm going over there to clean up that bedroom, and I walk in the house. And by this time, my mom had stopped taking the pills, or at least so I thought. And I walked in the house, and I saw my mom sitting there in that position that I'd seen her before, with her chin down on her chest, nodding off. Mm-hmm. And right next to her looked like a mayonnaise jar full of pills. And I had a fear shook over me, man. I saw that and panicked because I knew I was not going to stay sober with those pills in the house that I'm living in. It just ain't going to happen. I do not have the ability to do that. And I started backpedaling out of the house. And again, remember when I was running around streets, I was saying, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. Mm-hmm. That hit me again, except for today, I had one thing to do. I finally had one tool. Call your sponsor. So that's what I did. And I called him up, and he's like, dude, that sucks. Oh, man. But he said, you're going to have to follow up on this for now, because you can't go back to the till and try to change the deal. We got this deal worked out for you, and you're just going to have to suck it up and go over there and don't do nothing stupid, and we'll get you out of there into one of these men's recovery houses or something. He said, but I'll tell you what, dude. He said, we have these chances and these things where we get to challenge our reliance on our higher power. And he said, what I want you to do for the next week is pray for God to help support your recovery. And when I say God, I don't know what that is, man. I was brought up from my AA background and from a wonderful sponsor. Is there some power out there? I'm not it. And if you ask it, A lot of times it'll do what you, a lot of times it'll help you. And I thought that was awful weak advice. You know, I needed something a little better than pray for a week, right? But so far this guy been leading me in good direction, man. And so I said, okay. And when I was backpedaling out there, my dad saw me and he goes, "Hey, where are you going? I thought you was going to get that room cleaned up." And I was like, "I'll be back. I got to go. Something come up out." And so I went that next week and finally walked down there to that sentencing and went in there, and my mom wanted to go and my girlfriend wanted to go. And oh God. So they take you back in this room where you actually read the plea agreement and, the deal is cut back in there and you sign the paperwork and then they march you out in front where they court record it and the judge says what he says and all that. Right. So I'm reading this paperwork and I go, okay, it says here 1 year home incarceration and it had my home address on the paperwork. Not my mom and dad's. My home address was in the paperwork of where I would serve my home incarceration. It said 1 year of probation and the third year to be suspended pending successful completion of the other two. And that rang my bell so hard because, see, they made a mistake and I'm going to have to fix it for them. I got to tell these dumb sons of bitches that they'd messed it up. That I ain't supposed to do home incarceration there. I'm supposed to do home incarceration over here, you dummies. Can't get your shit straight. You know how the government is. They can't get nothing right. And but it rang me, man. And I don't even remember the formal sentencing out in front of the judge. I'd have no memory of it. I had no memory of standing out there saying, pleading to whatever was going on. And I walked out of that place again going, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. And I did have that too. And I called my sponsor and he started laughing. What are you laughing at, Chris? He said, you don't know what this is, do you? And I'm like, no, I don't know what it is. What is it? And he said, what have you been praying all week for? And I said, I've been praying for my higher power to support my recovery. Now, when I went around in the following days after that, some of my friends in AA were telling me I needed to go down there, that this was a program of rigorous honesty, and I needed to go down there and tell them they made a mistake. And my sponsor told me that would be undoing God's work. So I rode with that, man. And
sounds legit to me.
I had these good things were happening. I went from looking at a 6-year prison sentence to a 3-year prison sentence to settling for a year on home incarceration. I remember I had, my lawyer, he said, can you afford that? And I'm like, well, I can't hardly not afford it. What do you mean, can I afford it? But I was making good money as an engineer at a pretty big company over in Louisville. So I was doing pretty good and I figured I could afford it. Didn't really process like how big that lawyer bill was going to be and some other things, but, the ankle bracelets cost here $100 a week to wear them. So that's, on average $400 a month to be monitored. So I moved back in here, man, or I never really left, and started doing that home incarceration out of here. And I stayed in my sponsor's hip pocket and I did everything that he told me to do, man. And I went down to the probation office when they clamped that thing on my ankle, and they'd asked me, my sponsor told me to make a list of all the AA meetings I was going to, take them down there, tell them where I'm going, where my kids are going, where I need to take my kids to A and B, and give them my real schedule of what I do. And I'm like, Christopher, I think you're missing the point of home incarceration. This is, and he said, just go down there and do. What can it hurt? And I did, and I walked down there, man, and they had a piece of paper that you fill out with the home incarceration schedule, and it had like 3 items on it where you could go like 3 places during the week. and I was like, I can't fit all my stuff on here. And the old dude looked at me. I seen him. He pulled his glasses down his nose, and he looked at that piece of paper, and he goes, hold on just a minute. And he reached over and he grabbed a telephone, and he called somebody, and he said, Janine, Mr. Reeves is here, and we need to see you. And I thought, oh, shit. My sponsors got me in a mess today. And what I saw was not what I was expecting. I don't know exactly what I was suspecting was going to come around the corner. But this small, petite, blonde lady popped around the corner and she said, "Hi, Dan. I'm Janine. What do you got there?" And I told her, and she looked at it and she started quizzing me about these meetings. And so you're really going to these meetings? And I really was. And she goes, okay. And she talks to me for a minute. She looks over at Jim, the old guy, and she says, "Yeah, let him do all that." Now, I didn't know that normally home incarceration, they lock you down for 15 or 30 days according to your assessment. So you really are locked down for an initial piece of time. But this lady saw something that was happening in me, and she let me continue to go to my AA meetings. And if she'd have made me stop, I don't know what would have happened, because I was needing that in my life. And ended up being that this lady was like my angel down there. She helped me navigate the correction system. When one time I went down there, I'd left my house, I had a breathalyzer upstairs. My only hard line come into my house, come in upstairs. And so my home incarceration had an ankle bracelet and a breathalyzer, and they talked to one another. So every time I come home, that thing would alarm, and I'd have to go up there and blow in it. It would take a picture of me and send my blood alcohol, my picture downtown so they could have it on record. And this thing would do this, it would do it about 6 o'clock in the morning. It'd do it about 11 o'clock at night. One Sunday, it called for me 7 times. One day I run up them steps and I blew in it and I passed and I turned around. I didn't get halfway down the steps and the damn thing called for me again. I got thinking about that. They know people like me, because if I think I got 2 or 3 hours before it's going to go off again, I might sneak in a beer, and it caught me again. I couldn't hear that thing, so I put a baby monitor on it. And when I was down in the house, I hooked the other end of the baby monitor on my belt. And my girlfriend and the kids all called it the bat phone. I'd be someplace in there to whoop, 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 and I'd have to get up and tear ass up there and blow in it. I started doing some funny things. I started getting hats out. So every time I get my picture taken, I had a whole bunch of hats sitting up there. I put on a different hat every time, like a sombrero one time and a cowboy hat. And, they never said a thing about it, man. I thought it was funny. I thought they might get a giggle out of it, but they never did mention it. I worked these steps and my life changed. And after about 4 months sober, I'd worked these steps with that sponsor, and I can tell you I was free. Floyd County Community Corrections didn't think I was free because they still owned that bracelet on my ankle. But my heart and my soul was free. And I just carried on, man. For a dude who was on home incarceration, I was never home. I was going to recovery meetings. I was taking my kids to dance and scouts, and that scout thing was a little funny because it was still the same people that I'd done that deal with earlier. But I had to get the scoutmaster to sign my paper saying I was really there. You had to get verifications for every place you said you were going. So I had to have a piece of paper for every place I went that said that I was there. So I had to go up to that scoutmaster that had me resign, and I told him what was going on. And I said, so in order for me to bring my son here to Scouts, I'm going to ask you to sign this piece of paper. And he said, okay, it's not a problem. And every time I'd be sitting off in the background. It makes me tear up to think about how many people work to help me get sober. And all these people that's tried to help me all my life, giving me these chances, and I couldn't take them. And then finally that ended up being in a position where I was humbled enough and desperate enough that I had to ask these people for help. And when I asked them for help, they helped me. And I would sit back in the way and he'd look at me and he'd kind of do the handwriting like a pen, and I'd nod my head and I'd fill out the paperwork for him, so the only thing he had to do was sign it, all the location bullshit and everything. I had to get all that filled out. My sponsor taught me how to do that. You don't make those people do all that work, man. You just have them sign it. Same thing at dance. I had to go over there and drop my daughter off at dance. She wasn't quite as friendly about it, but she complied about the old felon dad bringing the daughter to school or to dance. I did end up pleaded to a Class D felony here in Indiana, which I am a felon. I have full confidence that someday that'll get released off my record. So many miracles happened, and those things like that paperwork changing, I don't know how to explain that. Maybe it is just a mistake down there. Maybe it just was. I don't know. I don't believe that. There's a couple other things like Janine being put in my life and having these people come into these positions to help me get better. And I do believe that when you turn your nose into the wind and doing better, the universe supports you there. Whatever you want to call that, God, the universe, karma, whatever. I don't really care what you call it. I still use the word God, but it's not the God a lot of people think of when they think God. It's just an easy word to use, you know. So I started making this miracle list. My sponsor said, you better start writing that stuff down. So I got this list and I start writing it down and things are happening. Like my daughter started going to Alateen. She ended up speaking for Alateen. So here's my 12-year-old daughter going to the local school systems and talking about what it looked like to have an alcoholic dad and how she dealt with it. And then the fact that he got sober. And you want to talk about something powerful. I know you got a daughter. Go listen to your little girl talk about your recovery story and how it hurt you, how it hurt her. There's not much more powerful than to sit out in the audience and listen to that. You want to cry, that'll get you crying.
Just you talking about that, doing it.
I see it. Well, my mom and dad had some health problems while I was on home incarceration, and I couldn't help them the way that I wanted to. My mom had a stroke. Then pain pills finally got her. She's having a neck surgery, and she went to the hospital, and she would always bring her own pain pills because they didn't give her enough in the hospital, right? And she had a stroke during the operation, and she lost all use of one side, and she couldn't talk and couldn't swallow. And I went in there to rip this surgeon's ass, man. I was like, that they screwed up, right? And I went in and finally got some time with him, and I was like, what in the hell happened? What's going on? What happened? And he just looked me right in the eyes, and he said, Mr. Reeves, your mother had way more narcotics on board than we were aware of. And when people have that kind of level of narcotics in their body and we give them anesthesia, this is what happens. Mm. And that shut me up real quick. She never did really recover from that. That was a long haul, man. It was, here I was on home incarceration. Dad's trying to take care of mom. I did break home incarceration a few times to help him. He'd call at 2:00 in the morning and say, mom's fell out of bed and I can't get her back in bed. Can you come over here and help me? And I would just leave. I would call I'd call that answering machine, tell them what I was doing, come back home. When I got back home, the breathalyzer alarm blow in it. And they were understanding. They didn't pin me to the wall on that stuff. And when I was 13 months sober, it was February the 7th. It was Super Bowl Sunday of 2016. Mom finally gave up the fight. She'd been in the hospital for a while, and they let us bring her home on hospice. And, my dad couldn't give her those easing medications. He just couldn't do it. And, this dopehead here, I was responsible for giving mom her morphine and her benzos, her Ativan, in order to keep her comfortable. And I don't think I'm capable of doing that on my own. Some kind of power helped me through that stuff, man. And I had this group of men supporting me during that time. And, I gave her those final dose when she died just seconds later on that Super Bowl Sunday morning. I was able to make amends with my mother before that. I don't know how coherent she was when I did it. You never knew exactly what state of mind she was in, but she seemed to accept my amends and understand. And I was able to unload that at least before she passed. I'm really glad about that. That's a huge thing on my list. All that support my dad gave me all those years, I get to do for him today, because after mom died, he didn't want to live alone anymore. And, he'd been with her all his life. And I watched my dad do some amazing stuff to help mom when she was sick. He did everything. I mean, way above and beyond the call of duty to help her. He rebuilt the bathroom over there, made it an ADA compliant bathroom. He's remodeling the house so that mom could be there. And, in recovery today, when we worked out this arrangement where he now lives with me, that's another miracle, man. Now I get to pay back to my dad and finally be the son he deserves. Me and him are best friends today. My kids, I burnt them hard, man. I gave my daughter one time. I was drunk, high on pills, and I was in my gun safe. And I handed her a little 22 pistol because it's about the size a kid might like. And I told her to pull the trigger. She shot that gun right over my shoulder and bust the window out behind me. I was loaded. I didn't know the gun was loaded. How many times has that happened, right?
Yeah.
You know what I did at that very moment? I got down on my knees and I pleaded with that little girl not to tell her mom. Whatever you do, Krista, do not tell your mom. And I saddled her with that, man. And the other times that I've done stuff, I would leave. They don't sell beer in Indiana on Sundays. So on a Sunday night, I would get in my car and leave my kids in their beds as like one of them's an infant and one of them's a toddler and drive to Louisville, Kentucky so I could get beer and drive back home and leave those kids unattended. Just insane stuff that when that parasite had my operating system hijacked, I did stuff that's just way out, just way out of character. I damaged those kids, man. They were scared to stay with me when I was on that year of home incarceration, and in the year prior when things got bad, they were scared to stay with their dad, and they were right. But that my ex-wife took a traveling nursing job, and she called me one day, and I think it was right about that same. I was maybe just right after a year sober. It was right after Mom passed, and she said, "Hey, I need to let you know something. I'm moving to Florida." Take his traveling nurse job. And I was like, well, what the hell is this? This is bullshit. You taking the kids? And she said, oh, no. I'm going to leave the kids with you. And I was pissed first because she'd taken the kids. And then I was pissed because she was leaving them with me. But she went down there and she ended up staying down there for 90 days. But what happened while she was gone is that I got to earn my kids' trust back and show them that I could be a real dad consistently every day, because they were, they were with me the entire time. And when I healed, they healed, and they're going to Alateen and they're doing stuff to help help their healing. And today I have a 17-year-old son and a 15-year-old daughter, and our relationship is great. They're with me half the time, and I know without a doubt that they love me and they support me, and they know my entire AA family and all my brothers in AA know my kids by first name. If they see them out someplace, you get a little text that says, hey, I just saw Chris at the mall. Thanks for letting me know, man. Is everything okay? The fellowship that I have around me, I've got a group of men. When I was 2 years sober, I held a retreat, a men's retreat. When I was still on home incarceration, my group held a little day-long retreat, and I couldn't go because it was outside the counties I could go in with home incarceration. Mm-hmm. And I was a little bothered by that. But then they come back and they was talking about the lack of privacy at this place. And I'm blessed to have this place out in the country. We got 54 acres out in Orange County, Indiana, with a log cabin that me and my dad, my brother built in 1999. And I told them guys, I said, hey, man, I got a place we can go. It won't be bothered. They're like, really? Yeah. So in 2016, I had about 20 men down there, and we went down for a weekend and had a men's retreat. In 2 more weeks, May 21st, maybe it's 3 weeks. In a couple of weeks, I'm going to be holding my 8th one down there. And, here I was 2 years sober, started leading men's retreats. And now it's something like I have to like do a lottery because I can't handle everybody that would be there. I had to cull it. There's just not room for everybody. And so I got 20 guys coming down in a couple of weeks, and we're going to go down there and we're going to cook food and we're going to do recovery work together and bond and commune and do man stuff and do some men's healing work while we're there. It's another miracle. The podcast is a miracle to me. One of the times I was down there, my brother and I partied. I got brothers like 30 months younger than me. And me and him ran and partied a lot together when we were kids. And, growing up and even up into then. And I stole pills from them too, so that pretty well sired that relationship back at that point in time. And my brother knew I had a problem, but he didn't think he did. And but it's awful hard to hang around, the brother relationship. One of them's getting sober and one of them's not. That just doesn't really work. And May of 2019, I was down there. I had 36 guys. I had too many. That's when it let me know that I can't handle that many people. I had 36 guys down there, and we had a great big ring around the fire and sharing and having a meeting. And in the middle of the day, there's always people that don't show. So there's no cell phone service there. So I had to drive up to the top of the hill and use the phone to see if anybody's lost. And and I drove up to the top of the hill to check my telephone. And I had a message from my sister-in-law, my brother's wife, and the message said, "Hey, Dan, me and Neil are quitting drinking. We're going to our first AA meeting tonight." And I've been praying for my brother to get sober for 5 years. But I didn't do anything, and I didn't push him, and I didn't tell him this is what he ought to do. I didn't do any of that crap, man. I just did me. I just did my recovery. And in May, the next month, he'll be celebrating 2 years of sobriety. And I got that phone call while I'm down there with 36 other dudes. You know, I was like, that's another one of them kind of miracle things. How's that phone call come through then? Start this movement here in Louisville, Kentucky, giving the 12 steps to anybody who wants them. It's called, we acronym it TSSR. You can go to 12stepspiritualrecovery.com and read about it. That's a big ass URL. We have TSSR meetings here where we have people that are coming in that are not addicts and alcoholics, and they're harnessing and using these 12-step tools to have better lives. And I get to watch it happen. And I am just sold out for what these 12-step tools do for you. There's a lot of people are hesitant to do them, and I'm not really sure why. I know some of it is you can get into some weird AA in places that just doesn't feel right. I know that's out and about, but the tools themselves, man, have allowed me to, come to grips with really who I am and face my past through the inventory and look at that and actually see what made me who I was today, what made me create these patterns in my life. And I talked about that before, where I repeat these behaviors over and over again without having any real idea why I'm doing it. Right. I get hooked up with some, it puts me in fellowship with guys because I can't see me very well, but these guys can see me. I didn't do worth a damn job running my own life, but the sponsor of mine seems to do a pretty good job helping me run my life, right? But you know what? I have noticed over time, he ain't so goddamn good at running his life either. But he's got a guy that helps him with his. And this whole daisy chain together of these hands around one another, helping each other do this thing. It feels like I'm part of it feels a lot like people that are in, and I don't want anybody out there to hear this wrong, because I am not a veteran, and I have a lot of respect for military veterans. But the only kind of the closest thing I can say to the brotherhood that I have around these men that are in my circle is similar to that of people who have been to war together. Because we're fighting a battle. It's a different battle. And again, I don't want to make any kind of, don't misunderstand me and think I'm comparing alcoholism and addiction to being in combat. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying the bonds that happened as a result of it are very similar. I'm part of a little army around here. And like, if I need some help right now, all I got to do is make a phone call, man. And I'll have guys over here to help me. In 2017, my ex-wife set me down and she said, "I need to tell you something." And I said, no, she called me, texted me at work, said I need to stop by. And I don't play that game no more. You got to tell me why I'm stopping by. I'm not going to go for your little hidden stuff anymore. And she said, "No, this is really sensitive and you just need to stop by." So I went, okay. And she set me down on her couch and she said, "You're going to need to sit down." And I was like, oh, fuck. And she had told me that her father molested my daughter. And I don't know how to fucking live through shit like that. I don't know how to do that.
Oh.
And my ex-wife was defending him, not her. And I ended up having to make the phone call to turn him in because they wouldn't. And I give him every chance to turn himself in or to do something. And I'm not capable of doing this, and what I want to do is go kill a dude, right? That's what's on my mind when something like that happens. But because of these 12-step tools, I have healthy ways. And if I'd have went and done something stupid, I wouldn't have been able to be here to support her. And that is what was important, is to support her.
Man, that's one of my worst fears.
Yeah, let's say I know there's some big time father nightmares, and losing a child is definitely on the list higher than this one, but this has got to be in like the top 5 fatherhood nightmares there are. That guy's in prison. He didn't go to prison for touching my daughter. He went to prison because he had tons of child pornography on his computer. But I don't really care how he got there. Just as long as he's there, that's all I care about. They say for every, and I can pull this up on the computer because some people doubt me when I say this, but there's a particular study out of one of the pretty highfalutin joints that says for every guy somebody molests, there's 50 of them that we don't know about. It come to light that he had touched a niece. He had messed with a niece 14 years before messing with my daughter, and the family swept it under the rug just like they were trying to do this time. Mm. And I said, no, if somebody would have done something back then my daughter wouldn't be having to be going through this. So the buck is stopping here. And I took care, I did what I needed to do there, and Christmas time comes, my daughter's real artsy, and she hand makes me something for Christmas and my birthday. She paints me something, or she'll make me some kind of thing. And I got a Christmas card that year, and it was one of them handwritten Christmas cards, and it said, "Thank you, Dad. You were the only one who supported me through this." She'll be home in just a little bit. She's out with a boyfriend for a little while. And I love her more than anything. And she does me too. And had I not had these 12-step tools in my tool belt, there's no way I could have walked through that in anything that even remotely resembled a healthy manner. No way.
Good for you, man.
I'll finish with this, okay? So my daughter had that happen. When little girls that have things happen to her want stuff, she gets them. My daughter wanted a puppy. I didn't want a puppy. I did not want a puppy. My ex-wife bought her a puppy. Puppy starts staying over here when she's with me. Bruno. He's a wild little pit bull boxer mix or something. Really good dog, but he's just hard-headed as all get out, man. And I'm sitting in my bed one Sunday. I like to take naps, and the doorbell rang right when I was dozing off. And shit. So I got up and I started walking in through my foyer, and I could see out the window, and the person standing out my window was the same girl that this guy across the street was telling to call 911. Remember when I said she's going, call 911, call 911, call 911. And she's standing outside my window. And I don't, I had an EPO out. I couldn't do amends with these people. I couldn't, I had to like dodge them. I couldn't, if I was in a restaurant eating and they walked in, I'd have to leave. I'm thinking, I open up that door and I'm looking at her, and I realize she's got a leash in her hand and a little puppy dog, not a puppy dog, but a dog. And I'm thinking in my head, you know who I am, right? You remember who I am. Why are you doing on my doorstep? But I just said, yes, can I help you? And she said, can my dog play with your dog? Yeah. So we turned him loose in the backyard. She stood there and talked to me for a few minutes. And I said, you know what? I have a big fenced in backyard. They don't have one. She's now, this is a granddaughter of the people I broke into, and she's living over here with her grandparents now, or at the grandparents' house. They'd since passed, actually. They had passed away. And anytime you want to, if you want to turn that dog loose in the backyard, have at it. And she would do it all the time. And the dog's name was Rix, like R-I-X. Mm-hmm. And I come home, and man, Bruno got to be a lot better dog when he ran for a few hours every day with this other dog, because they would just go batshit crazy in the backyard, wrestling and chasing each other. And then when Bruno would come in, man, he would just lay down and sleep. And so that was a regular thing. And I got home from, I got laid off at work, laid off that job I'd had for 28 years. And I was trying to figure out what I was doing. I was doing this little bit of handyman, and I went and got some fast food, and I was home, and I sat on the back porch, and I was getting ready to get something to eat, and I heard the gate rattle. Remember how I told you I know every squeak, every door creak? I know it all from being here for that many years. I hear the gate rattle. I look over my shoulder. I'm assuming it's going to be this girl with the dog, and I look over. It's the dude that had the ball bat that night. And he's standing there bringing that dog over. And when I stood up, he started backpedaling, like getting the hell out of there. Mm-hmm. And I said, and I know who he was, and I said, David. And he stopped and he looked at me and he goes, yeah. And I said, I have something I need to talk to you about. And he come out to the fence, and I walked up and I've coached a lot of guys through amends. I've done a lot of amends myself. I know how to do a powerful, meaningful amend. And I looked him right in his eyes and explained to him that I'm working a different program today. I'm in a 12-step recovery program. In that we make a list of the people we had harmed, and you are on my list, and I didn't know how I was going to talk to you. And I explained the things that I did to harm him and how I harmed his father. And I gave him a chance to talk after I was real specific with what I did, and admitted my wrongs and the harms that I did. I invited him to talk. And one thing he said, he has been afraid ever since then that he was going to get in trouble for coming over here and busting my shit up. In the middle of that amends, we're both standing there with tears running out of our eyes. The dogs are running around in the yard. Turned out we both do yoga. We both like to backpack. We both like to do stuff. And that guy walked away, man, and I knew what God did just then, man. I'm not responsible for how to do all this stuff. I just got to show up and do it. Suit up and show up. And one of the funny things was, man, I turned around and looked down, and that Bruno was sitting there with a big smile on his face. Like, see what I did? Think about that, man. My daughter had to go through something really bad that ended up getting her a puppy, that ended up getting that girl come over here, that wound up putting me in a position where I was able to do amends with somebody I had no idea how I was going to do amends with, how I was ever going to make it up to him. And it happened through some goofy chain of events, which is another thing on my miracle list. I don't know how that happens. I don't know how that shit happens, man. But it's been one after another since I've been working this program. And, if that ain't a miracle, I don't know what is.
Whew, man. You got me a few times, my friend. That was a hell of a story.
My eyes are teared up too, man. It touches me every time I tell it. And every bit of it's the truth. It's crazy life I've had the past 6 years. January, I celebrated 6 years of sobriety. And, my life's energy goes to do it, to talking about what this 12-step program did for me, because I've watched it, and I thought I was a fluke, but we got a guy facing life in prison for selling dope that killed somebody. And he's still not in jail, and it's been 2 years. I don't know what God's doing. I'm just sitting back watching, but he's working this program. And I watched one person after another come in here and push their chips to the middle of the table, and I watched their lives get better every single time. And the flip side of that is I've never seen anybody work these steps and say, I wish I hadn't have done that.
Yeah, that's a powerful thing, man.
Thank you, Sean.
No, thank you, man. You that was a great 2, what we got, a little over 2 hours now.
Yeah, it takes a little bit to tell that story. It just doesn't get told in a minute.
Well, hey, you know what? That's why I said you take whatever you take when you say it, because you gave me the opportunity to do that, and I felt like you can't tell stories like that in a metered amount of time.
Nope, you're right.
In order to get the full effect and to be able to connect the way that you need to connect with the person who is sharing that with you, it has to take what it takes.
Yeah. And there really is some magic too, man, when you get two guys that's sitting here. Cause I feel, after you telling me your story, this magic out of this podcasting world, I walk away feeling like I got a new friend, and all we did was sit here and shared our real truths with one another, and get that human connection going. And something that my recovery is based on is connecting up with my fellow man here on earth and having a completely different heart about doing it today.
Yeah. You know so the TSSR, is that what it is? A 12 step. So that TSSR, is that, if I'm understanding right, it has nothing to do with whether you're sober or not. It's just the principles and of the program.
Yep.
For regular people who want to get involved in that.
You know how many people are walking around needing something, right? They're just not happy. There's a lot of people who are suffering from what I just say is like misery. Go to the grocery store and look at the zombies walking around. There's just a lot of people suffering in the world today. And there's ways out. And I don't know if the 12 step is the way for you, the proverbial you, but I'm standing here offering it to you because it worked for me. And I'm coming out of a way deeper hole than you're in, so if it will work for you, and I'm getting this opportunity to do that, to hand it off to people that do not have the same problem I have.
Yeah, I'd be curious about that, because I know for myself, when I went, tried to get into AA, right. Sometimes they're just not you have all of the stars need to be in alignment for you, especially, maybe not for you, but for me.
They had to be for me. My story tells it about how it had to be. Everything had to lay out. I met the right man, that whole thing about when the student's ready, the teacher appears, all that.
Yeah.
And that guy's still my sponsor. And another thing is that guy's one of my very best friends. My relationship with my sponsor has turned into being something way beyond just sponsee. We are really the dearest of friends, best friends. And, so that TSSR fits some niches, it fits the ones for the people who don't have the isms, that don't fit in a traditional 12-step fellowship, because if you got Gamblers Anonymous, you got Sex Anonymous, you got Overeaters, I think there's 100 of them, I think, all told, because now every substance has one, marijuana and cocaine and meth, and all of them have some A attached to them. But if you don't fit in any of them, where are you going to get these tools?
Yeah.
And are we going to hold them? One of the things if you hung around any AA meetings for very long, somebody said, I wish my wife was working a program, or I wish Uncle Joe was working a program, And the way I look at it is like, I think they say that and they got the big book hidden behind their back and they're going, I wish everybody had this program.
Yeah, right.
And you know what TSSR did? They brought it out and said, here it is. Who wants it? It's not, if you don't want it, that's cool. But if you're looking for some tools to do this thing called life, so it fits the people who won't fit in the traditional 12-step fellowships. It fits people who maybe have been in 12-step fellowships, but they're kind of stale and they're not feeling like they're growing anymore. This gives a deeper dive, another level, another way to do the work, because my sponsor's been sober 37 years and he's had some great teachers, and it's all really tribal knowledge, and everything that he has learned over those 37 years he put in this book called 12-Step Spiritual Recovery that's out at Amazon. And so it's the people looking for a deeper dive that's traditionally in it, and it's for the people who never could really feel it when they went to AA, NA, or any of that. They just couldn't get with it for whatever reason, whether it was the humans that was in the room, whatever it was. It allowed another avenue to maybe harness these tools that have worked for so many millions. And you don't have to, if you don't like AA, this ain't AA. If you don't like NA, this ain't NA. We'd have a Zoom meeting every Thursday night. We have a co-ed Zoom meeting. The ladies have one on Tuesday night, and there's a meditation meeting that happened actually tonight that's actually live now again. But anybody wants to come to that Zoom meeting and try it out, you included, can join up. It's a 7:30 on Thursday nights, 7:30 Eastern.
Yeah, for sure. I'd be interested in it, just for something a little different.
Yeah, come check it out. There's a lot of good people in it, and deep sharing, and these hearts, I find these people who really do support one another. That's another thing that I felt unsupported most of my life. Even though I had the support of my parents, like I was described, I still felt unsupported all my life. I felt like I was, dangling on the end of a string all the time. And now I don't feel like that anymore. I got this wonderful family of my AA men's group that's around me. And now also I have this wonderful TSSR group growing up around.
Yeah, man. Yeah, for sure. I'll definitely shoot me the information
I will.
on Instagram. And then, if anybody out there, you're interested in it, hit me up on email or whatever you can hit.
Yep. And you can find it on, there's a 12-Step Spiritual Recovery Facebook page. There's an Instagram. It's all spelled out, 12-Step Spiritual Recovery. And there's 12stepspiritualrecovery.com to the website, and it's got a list of the meetings, and then it's got some stuff that about what the movement's about. Because that's the dream.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. And actually the book, the link to the book on Amazon and for an AA Big Book is in the description as well. Direct links to all that. Yep. And so if you want to get a hold of Dan here or check out his podcast,
you can contact me on there on the webpage.
Yep, spiritualunderground.org right there. Check him out on Facebook. You can connect there as well. That's the Facebook site for your podcast and also your Instagram.
Thank you.
All that stuff is available to you in the description. And man, I just want to say thank you again, brother. That was your story touched me.
I know it's there's a little bit of a weird thing about that, and I think with this power, give me this story to touch people. I think that's exactly why I have it, and I really I try to do that to the fullest extent that I can.
Whew, boy, I'm gonna have to decompress from this.
Yeah.
Now, if this had been the first live stream, I don't know if I'd have been able to do the next one.
Yeah. These things doing these there's a big emotional output that comes along with this. I always have to have a decompression period after I'd get done with the podcast. I never schedule something, and I've done double headers too, man, and not live ones. I don't know. I've got a feeling that the live ones are probably even amped up a little bit more on the amount of life energy output you have to do in order to give it what it deserves. I bet you are wore out after 2 of them today.
Yeah, a little bit, man. That one part with your daughter, man, that's just that's my biggest fear is that something like that happens to her, and I don't have I got anger issues as it is, man, and I don't know if I'd have been able to do what you did,
Yeah, well, God did some things for me in that too. I mean, I had a bunch of guns, man. I was a gun nut. I was a AR-15.com fanatic and had those rifles and all that. And whenever I got in all that trouble and got to be a felon, poof, all that stuff went away. And some of my thoughts were, if I still had one of them, and what good have that done? Now grandpa and dad's in jail, or grandpa's dead and dad's in jail.
Yeah. Well, I just want to say thank you again, man. And
yeah, it's good connecting with you, man. I think you're doing great stuff, and I love all your missions. And I've been listening to your podcast too, so it's on my regular rotation. I got a lot of catching up to do, but I do listen, and I do enjoy your show, man. I really do. I've been listening to it regularly.
Well, thank you, man. And I checked out a couple of your episodes too, and we'll be continuing. So, if nothing else, what podcasting does, and anybody out there that's watching this, is it's another way to connect to individuals, to connect to people, to connect to stories, to bring out the humanness in being a human.
Yep. And there's so much negative out there if you want to find it, right? But there's also a ton of these positive stories, these rising from the ashes, these things where you were at and where you're at today, where you've come from, where I've come from. And I would much rather have that in my diet than listening to what the president's doing, or what the coronavirus is doing, or what South Korea is doing, or I'd rather hear your story than that. Any day of the week.
Yeah, ditto. Not interested in any of that other stuff.
A lot of people are addicted to that.
That's because it's trauma.
Yeah,
it's basically your well, we don't want to get into that. It's a whole
trauma bonds.
Yeah. All
Cool,
right, Dan.
Man. Well, I appreciate the hell out of you, and thank you for allowing me to participate in my recovery in this manner tonight.
You're welcome, man. You're very welcome. And when this does come out in the podcast platform, I will give you all the links to it and the promo materials, and so you can share this if you want on your platforms.
I absolutely will. Can't wait.
All right, brother. I'm going to take us out here and do a couple of announcements and pay the bills here.
Yeah.
All right, brother. Have a good evening.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye. Whew, man. That was a story. Let me tell you. He got my emotions pretty good there in a couple of parts of that story. But I loved every bit of it, and I love the connection and the being authentic and transparent and just being real, man. That's what a lot of people are missing these days, and podcasting has made it possible for me to be able to connect with people in that kind of a way. So I appreciate you for it, Dan. And so let's get back to this. And this episode of the podcast is brought to you by Get Past Your Shit, the book, Kelly McCausey. It's 19 stories of people who prove you can. I've read the first chapter, which is Kelly's story, and she's also a friend of mine and a podcaster as well. You can catch all of that and the direct links to her sponsor and everything that she's got going on in the description as well. And I think, nope, I have one on Thursday. Thursday, I have an episode at 11 a.m., and that is going to be with myself and Aurora. We are doing we're doing the third episode. We're having a guest on who watched the episode, or one of our episodes, or both of them. I don't know which one it was, but she reached out to us and wanted to be a guest on the show and talk about some of the things that we talk about, which is abusive behavior in men and women. And since we are both formerly abusive people, we decided to come together and have a show and talk about that and, our struggle with it in the past and, kind of how we deal with it going forward and mitigate some of these issues and, triggers and all those stuff that's associated with anger and being an abusive person. So check that out, 11 a.m. on Thursday, the 6th. That'll be available on a live stream. So until then, just keep it 100. Stay true to yourself, because everything else is just noise.
You've been listening to the Nowhere to Go But Up podcast. Sean is a single dad, a union blue-collar guy, and he spent time in federal and state prison for drug trafficking and fraud. When he was released from prison in 2006, all he had was the clothes on his back, a bag of mail, and some paperwork. Since then, he's turned his life around and shares the struggles and successes on this podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show, and we hope you were moved. To connect to the show, book a guest spot. For merch, Patreon, PayPal, and social media links, go to linktr.ee/nowhere to go but up. On Instagram at Nowhere to Go But Up Now. On Twitter at But Up Now. On the YouTube channel at Nowhere to Go But Up Podcast. See you next time.